across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good evening, afternoon, whatever it is. Welcome along, JK on Drive, on the home of common sense and free speech. This is Talk. I'm slightly thrown because at the exact moment I was going to open my mouth and tell you what the lead story was, my wife has just texted me and gone, Oliver, who's 5, is listening in the car. Ollie, hello, afternoon, love you, mate. Hope everything's good. Switch it off, Vic. Listen, welcome along. Loads going on. I don't know where to start. Listen, we can do all the boring stuff. We can tell you that apparently Sir Drury Starmer, the man who says one thing and then either fails to do it or does the complete opposite, says that he's going to instigate a crackdown on immigration after this week's local elections. Not before, not in the last year, but after the elections. To me, that sounds like carrot and stick, but I could be wrong. That could be on the basis of the fact that he thinks other parties might be winning seats. I've no idea, but he will unveil a crackdown on immigration after this week's local elections. Of course you will, mate. I was looking at a story today, actually, which is really interesting, because he used to live in Windsor, next door to Windsor. Many of you will know, some won't, is a little town called Datchet, completely overrun by migrants. The main hotel there has got 300 to 500 of them. Many residents putting their houses up for sale and saying that they cannot bear it any longer. The migrant issue continues to dominate many parts of this country, and I think will be central to those elections next week. More public sector strikes could be on the way if the Labour government doesn't give them the pay rise, the unions that they want, because of course the unions will say, well, we financially back you, so you need to give us that money. We could talk about that. We can talk about the BBC. But ladies and gentlemen, and please God, Victoria's turn the radio off. This is my favourite story by a mile since we started here 3 years ago. Forget any other attempt at the 3-hour radio attempt, the last however long it is. This is us. Pin back your lugholes, because this is true. An Iranian asylum seeker who argued he could not be deported because he was a sex toy smuggler has, ladies and gentlemen, won his battle to remain in the United Kingdom. The unnamed man applied for refugee status in the UK, claiming to our authorities that in his home country, his illicit business activities would be looked upon badly. He claimed he smuggled boxes of vibrators and other adult devices across the border. Under Islamic law, of course, sex toys are illegal and there's a ban on bringing them into Iran. The Iranian man's elaborate argument was dismissed by a lower-tier immigration tribunal, which said he gave inconsistent and implausible evidence to support it. But he won his legal battle despite all of that. This man gets to stay in our country because his illicit... I mean, it doesn't matter that he smuggles sex toys, but he's staying here because if he goes back to Iran, they'll find that a bit beneath them. But he can stay here. I thought the chicken nugget story was the low point some weeks ago. I can't go back to my country because my son doesn't like the chicken nuggets in Iran. We are now absolutely at the lowest point we've ever been in the United Kingdom. An Iranian asylum seeker has won the right to stay in this country and cannot be deported because his sex toy smuggling business would be frowned upon in his home country. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what to say anymore. Please be part of the show. 0344 499 1000. Jodie, back from a romantic weekend with Cam. Big Cam, that's a rumour. 0344 499 1000. Ryan's here, not happy. Watford fan, as miserable as me as a West Ham fan. WhatsApp him, voice note him, do whatever you want. 0344 499 1000. Your texts are always welcome. 87222. Jezza, I am fuming over this Iranian sex toy smuggler, but at least he put a smile on somebody else's face, says Chris in Newby. Now, I was thinking, Ryan, you've got 10 minutes to come up with today's question. Can you find a broadcastable question tied in to the smuggling of sex toys to Iran? 0344 499 1000. What better way to introduce our next guest, a man who... how far can you fall? This man used to advise the government. Now he's being asked to address the sex toy smuggler on JK Drive on Talk. Good afternoon, James Price. How are you?
This story has got me positively vibrating and shaking with fury.
Buzzing with anger. It's ludicrous, man. Mike does this amazing feature on Breakfast on the Morning Glory where he does the migrant story of the day. And we've had some pearlers, haven't we, the last few weeks? We've had, I can't go back because the chicken nuggets in Iran are not as good as here, and my son, and, you know, he won't like it, and then, oh, I'll be traumatized. This is genuinely true. An Iranian sex toy smuggler gets to stay in the United Kingdom despite all of our problems because his illicit business would be looked down upon and considered disrespectful in his home country.
I'm lost for words. This doesn't often happen to you or I, but where even to begin with this? We shouldn't be surprised, actually, because there have been some other incidents alongside the chicken nugget gate and alongside the woman who said that she couldn't be deported back to the Caribbean because her Latvian husband wouldn't like the spicy food there.
Yes.
But there were some really serious ones. We said we couldn't deport some people back to places like Pakistan. These people were paedophiles, and in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, another instance, they treat paedophiles quite badly in those countries. We couldn't send these people back, not in spite of them being paedophiles, but because they were paedophiles. And therefore, Britain is going to have to become the landing ground for every paedophile in the world because we apparently treat those who want to do the most despicable crimes on earth to children because other countries will treat them less well.
It's just unbelievable.
Treating paedophiles as badly as they would treat them in those countries. I think that would be a very moral thing for us to start doing, in fact.
But of course, we're not going to do that because we've got a police force who, with the child rapist situation, certainly we know this from Rotherham, the police said, and I quote, some weeks or months ago, it took 8 years because we worried about social division and cultural uprisings and problems. Oh, great, so break the law, and because you come from another country, the police won't investigate it. But I have to keep repeating this because people tuning in will think I am making this up. An Iranian asylum seeker who argued he could not be deported because he was a sex toy smuggler has won his legal battle to stay in Britain. Under Islamic law, sex toys are illegal and there's a ban on bringing them into Iran. The man's elaborate argument was basically about how he would be treated badly and he wouldn't have any money and he wouldn't be able to smuggle any vibrators into Iran, and thus he should stay here so his business could flourish. That means we're either perverted, all of us, or absolutely idiotic. But I would suggest we are beginning to become the laughing stock in the world, James. Seriously, this is ludicrous, man.
Yeah, absolutely. You joke with people from countries like Albania. We know that the Albanians, because of some stats that have come out, for example, I think there was a stat over the weekend that 1 in every 5 Albanians in the UK had been arrested for a crime at some point. So we know that these things happen much more with some countries than others. But you'll joke with somebody from Tirana in Albania going, looks quite nice around here, like, can't see any homeless people, can't see any of these problems, any criminals. No, that's right. We just send them all to the UK. So you get 4 countries sending their worst, to quote someone once, they're not sending their best. And then on the flip side of it, places that are attracting a lot of elite human capital, like Dubai, for example. Now, lots to be said for and against Dubai, but at least there's no crime there and there's no tax there and it's lots of good weather and lots of safety and all the rest of it. There's an insult going around saying, oh, is so-and-so here yet? No. He's still back in London. He's still back in the UK.
Yeah.
As if that, why would you ever bother staying in this country? Because it's only for the dildo salesman and all the chicken nugget eaters and all the rest of it.
And also, on the other side of that, and I read this morning, I love the way you did that. I read this morning, I don't know whether you know this, but I lived in Windsor with Vic for years. And right next to Windsor is Datchet. Which is just a sweet little town, a very small town on the side of Windsor by the Thames. Now, there's a massive article today about despairing homeowners of quite expensive houses in the leafy village of Datchet in the shadow of Windsor Castle. There's one hotel, it's called the Manor House Hotel. There's about 300 to 400 asylum seekers. And genuinely these people who have nothing other than, they're just being honest, are saying, these men, there's no women or children, by the way, before you start that bleeding argument, not you, are walking the streets, they're committing crime, they're urinating, they're smoking, they're taking drugs, the police do absolutely nothing. And some people, when I say this, will go, oh, whatever. These people now can't sell their homes, despite the fact they want to get the hell out of the area because nobody wants to move in. That is a direct response, my friend, of how it is impacting these ridiculous laws on the British people. I mean, if you'd worked all your life and bought your house, you don't want that. And it's everywhere. And it needs to be recognised and admitted to, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. Look, the more we hear of stories, whether it's the sex toy criminal being allowed to stay, or whether it's these sorts of things that it's hard to put a funny spin on, the more these things store up and that we don't address the root causes of these problems, which are huge numbers of people coming here from, let's be frank, completely alien cultures, completely incompatible ways of living than we have here in Britain, and that we have more and more of these people coming all the time. The rest of the population gets older, the rest of the country gets poorer, our ability to deal with it gets lower, and the ability then to actually get things back to the way they should be in a safe and legal and timely manner is more unlikely. And what is the result of that, therefore? Very concerningly, the result of that is more breakdown of civil society, of increased levels of disorder, moving almost towards, as some academics, a guy called Dr. David Betts from King College London, who's a very able, sober, serious, well-respected academic, says that the UK is now on course for a civil war. And when you start hearing stories like this, it's not that surprising. And to really scare people a bit more on such a beautiful sunny day, just think about the size of the British Army. About 75,000 people. That's it now. That's what Putin hires or manages to rope into his evil war in about 2.5 months. Look at the number of police officers we've got. Look at the number of special forces who are now being attacked decades later by lefty lawyers for the kind of excellent work they did in keeping us safe. And even the armed police officers who, when they shoot someone who is obviously a wrong 'un, they're told that they're about to be threatened and attacked. So Britain is weaker than it's been at any point for a very, very long time in terms of the people we've got who can actually deal with widespread civil disorder and disobedience, at the same time that we're importing huge numbers and more people in.
I thought of you actually yesterday on a Sunday. My father-in-law, Robin, who listens to this every day and is somewhat of a template for me. He's 80 years of age, and for many years he's had these concerns about immigration, and several members of his family have said he's talking nuts. I think he's talking absolutely true. He was talking to one of his, I won't give it too much away, but one of his grandchildren. And this person, who's intelligent and successful, was saying, you know, you don't understand, Grandad. These people are coming from war-torn areas, to which Grandad quite rightly said, well, if that was the case, why don't they bring their wives and children? And why would you not when you get to the first area, land, country that isn't at war? Why don't you stop there? Yes, but you don't understand. No, I do understand. We're too soft in this country. And you're right. And we can sit here every day and say, for me, the absolute deterrent for the United Kingdom in future for immigration is to stop being such a soft touch. And it riles the hell out of me, whether it's chicken nuggets or sex toys or whatever the hell it is, that these lawyers are being paid money by British taxpayers, by us, to make excuses for these people. Now, going back to the whole adage about, you know, Britain was always the one that cared. We cannot even afford to look after our own. Don't go anywhere. We have a voice note by 4:15. Obviously, Anna in Surrey wants to talk about the Iranian sex toy smuggler. Go.
Jess, is there any mention there of how he got them in and out? And what about the poor people of Iran? What about their sex lives? I mean, what will they do without him? I really think in the interests of the poor Iranian people and their dull sex lives, he ought to be sent back, you know, maybe with a few items to help them along.
Brilliant. I love Anna in Surrey. I mean, that's exactly... I mean, we laugh about it, right? We laugh about it. But then you think about the people of Datchet and other people across this country who are struggling, public services, you know, straining. And you go, I don't know what else needs to be told to the government or the authorities. This ideology, James, that, you know, to me, it's really simple. Create 1,000 people in a building that can work these things out, make some strong, hard rules, make it much harder to come, make it much less attractive to be here, and you'll see a change. Was it you that gave me the figure of Trump? Love him or loathe him, many loathe him. In the first 3 months, I think, of being in power, the same 3 months last year, nearly 400,000 illegal migrants flooded into the United States. Under his watch, in the last 12 weeks, 8,000. Work out the math, as they say in America. That's somebody doing what he said he was going to do. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, one, in the Trump example, he's been elected to do exactly that. He understands how bad these things have got. His supporters understand how bad these things have got. And the Biden administration, it seems basically at this point, it's impossible to conclude otherwise, that they were importing future voters.
Yep.
And I think that perhaps that's what the current government think they're doing as well. The difficulty there, of course, is that actually, as we saw from the last general election, that these sorts of people, they tend to be from Muslim majority countries. They tend to have views that are completely inimical, completely alien to living in Britain. They realise they don't actually even need the Labour Party as a vehicle for these things anymore. A couple of Gaza supporting independence get elected last year. They speak about the Gaza more than they speak about anything else. One of them wants to have blasphemy laws to stop you criticising the Quran. One of them has spoken up in favour of cousin marriage, all these sorts of horrendous things. They seem more interested in campaigning for an airport to be built in Mirpur in Pakistan than sorting out the bins in their own city in Birmingham. All these sorts of problems. We're going to have more of this kind of sectarian politics going on if we keep importing more of these people. We need to get serious about the kind of laws that we need to change in order to enforce the ability we have to actually tighten up our borders. It's actually not that complicated, right?
No.
We've still got a great big navy. We've still got a lot of money that we could use to spend to send these people back.
I don't mean to jump in, I want to move on, but I think it's about will, and I don't give a toss what anybody tells me. I don't think there is the political will, and that surprises me. But we should not fear. 418, James Price, let us rejoice, because our Prime Minister, the great Sir Keir Starmer, I mean, this again just sums up what a complete and utter wet weekend this man is, has announced today, right, ready? We have to be careful because the local election's happening. I am going to unveil a crackdown on immigration after this week's local elections. Sorry? After this week's local elections. Again, sound bites. You know, smash the gangs, cut down, no meat on the bone, no plan, no idea, just sound bites to stupidly believe that the people will be placated. Well, interestingly, in the general election, he did lie. He lied to the waspy women. He lied to the farmers, he lied to the pensioners, he lied to the veterans, he looked them in the eyes and lied, and they voted him in. Be very interesting to see what happens. But the week before, I'm going to come up with a plan. No, you're not. You're trying to curry favour, and it won't work, I don't think. Not in my mind.
That anybody really is. As you say, just lie after lie after lie. And look, we all know now that mass migration has been this enormous problem culturally, economically, diplomatically, for defense reasons, for all these other things in our way of life. The fact that Starmer's actually going to say that he's going to get to grips with it, of course he's not. The fact that he's even saying it is explicitly just to deal with reform as an electoral threat. Not because he thinks it's the right thing to do, not because he knows that the country is coming apart at the seams, not because he realizes what a massive failure multiculturalism has been, that we've got people who care more about their religion or their ethnicity than about their nation. No, none of that. Just that he doesn't want to lose his job in a few years' time. That's the only.
Two other things very quickly. There's a report today saying that millions of public sector workers, including teachers and nurses, should indeed be given a pay rise as much as 4%. This is what I love. Rachel Thieves, or Richard III as Mike and I call her, right? She's already up a creek without a paddle. The IMF last week saying you've got no room for manoeuvre, mate. You've got it completely wrong. You've either got to raise taxes or screw public services even more. This is the reality, tis it not, James, of promising all their union paymasters, we'll get in, we'll do this, we'll do that. The reality is the coffers are bare, and the only way that any Labour government ever pays all the unions off before they bankrupt the country in the past was by printing money, and in this case it will be the only answer they've ever got. Will tax the rich even more. And anybody with a business or anybody with a savings plan or anybody with anything that's made anything that will benefit the country will bugger off, because the truth is this Labour Party are like every other single Labour government in the last 100 years. They know nothing more in their minds than taxing the successful. It doesn't work. And there will be strikes, and I tell my kids there'll be blackouts and there'll be shortages, and they look at me like it's the 1600s. But it will happen because it happens every time Labour is in power, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. And very quickly on this, people might remember how bad the 1970s were with those roving power cuts and the bodies going unburied and the rubbish piling up in the streets. We're already seeing two of those three already. All the strikes and all the rest of it. That was at a time before mobile phones, before you could easily send money abroad.
Yeah.
Right? People who are now wealthy can get all of that money out of the UK through clever means. They go to the UAE, they go to America, and they won't spend the money here.
Couldn't agree more. Final one before you go. We love having you on. This is brilliant. There's lots of things that we should bash of an afternoon. No, I didn't say that. No, I said bash. The BBC, a small number of BBC stars and managers behave unacceptably at work, and bosses often fail to tackle them, a report to the broadcaster has found. The review, commissioned by the BBC's board, so mark your own homework, is in the wake of the Hugh Edwards scandal. Oh yes, where the paedophile's still allowed to be at large and we're still paying his pension. There's not a widespread toxic culture, but there is a minority of people whose bad behaviour is not addressed, says Samir Shah, the new chairman of the BBC. They need to look a little bit more inwardly than that, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's right. Again, why are people watching the BBC anymore? Do you watch the 6 o'clock news? Do you watch the 10 o'clock news anymore? I don't think anybody really does, and nobody really takes it seriously. Whether it's Doctor Who and having storylines that say that the trans people in it are more special and important than normal people, and that's how they can save the universe, which is a real plot line of the new Doctor Who, or it's the biased broadcasting they've got in other areas. Let's just scrap the whole thing and start again is probably an easy way. Or at least strip back all the funding that it's got and only do the most highbrow opera, didactic stuff like that.
Completely. And you cannot tell me in 2025 that the BBC, we have it every single week on the show, and I will continue to say it, they need to justify their existence, JP. We are forced to pay that ridiculous fee for quality that is not what it ever was. There's certain things that are still good on the BBC, but it has an agenda. It is left-wing. It's not. It does everything that it says and a lot less, in my humble opinion. I think people look elsewhere. Loving the sort of the check shirt, the country look this afternoon. How long have you been married now? Because my bank manager got married on Saturday, bless him.
It'll be a month tomorrow, but I used the gilet to hide all these devices from an Iranian friend of mine who's asked me to hold on to them for him for a while.
I wonder what the buzzing was. Thank you very much indeed, James Price, as ever brilliant, former government special advisor, 423. What do you want to talk about? Oh, it can only be about one subject. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a lie. If you're tuning in to Talk Drive, an Iranian asylum seeker has argued that he shouldn't be deported because he's a sex toy smuggler. He claims that if he went back to Iran, his illicit business activities will be looked well, they will be frowned upon. Adult devices are not allowed in Iran, and thus, if he goes home to Iran, he'll be skint. So he's going to stay here and continue his sex toy business because we're too soft to do anything about it. Do you see what I did there, Jodie? We need to be harder. Coming back in 3.
They're responsible, many of them, for delivering some very important public services in an important area of policy. Some of them, unfortunately, are responsible for funding the absolute guff that we see time and time again from central government. And one of the things that people vote for when they vote in general elections is for change and for ministers that are able to enact that democratic mandate. But Labour ministers that have come in since the election have found that when they're pulling levers, nothing is actually happening, and that's because so much of this power has devolved to this massive body of Quangocrats.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
What you damn well want, so I'm a free speech and common sense, JK on Drive. We're live across the United Kingdom till 7 o'clock. Thanks for tuning in, because when you do, it gives us so much more time to work out what's coming next. Right, if you want to be on, Jodie is primed and ready to go. She's buzzing away in the background. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Ryan will take your voice notes as well. Listen, Ryan said, this is what I did. He's turned to Starmer. We can continue if you want to do the sex toy thing, Jez, but we like to move it on. No. Shove it. Excuse the fun. I just have to keep going back to it because I can't believe, Ron, that we live in a country that says, I know you're Iranian, you shouldn't be here. I know you've got an illicit sex toy smuggling business, but you stay, because if you go back to Iran, nobody wants to buy your vibrators from you. That's how soft we are. But I tell you what, if you've worked all your life and you can't eat your home, you're a waspy woman who was promised a pension, a farmer who just has worked your fingers to the bone and is going to have your business taken away from you, this government's ready to destroy you. That is wrong in every which way and on every level. 0344 499 1000. Who's this? David. I cannot believe this idiotic government wants to clamp down on student visas. Surely it's the illegal immigration they should be focusing on. Hello to JB. Is that Julia Brewer? Oh, no, it's not. In Aberdeenshire. I don't know why I did that. The sex toy smuggler. The question is, how did they smuggle them in? And was it the funny walk that shopped him? Very interesting. Not getting involved. Hello to Cliff. Cliff says, the feature story about the Iranian vibrating smuggler, is that straight up? There's a strange buzz to me surrounding this story. We need to get to the bottom of it. Oh, I see. It's all cheese from you lot. Margaret's been on from Birmingham. The smuggler's favourite song has to be good, 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 good vibrate. Never mind. Stewpot. We need Trump-style deportations of paedophiles and foreign criminals, says Stuart in Derby. You know what, Stu? A lot of people will go, yeah, but that man's an ogre. That man might be flawed in many instances, but what that man has definitely said is, I'm going to put the American people first. Yes. Jeremy, that Iranian man really is taking the... Yes, he absolutely is. Hello to David. Hi, Jez. This sex toy criminal, he's whipping us with his 9 tails and laughing at us. What next? Someone saying he's the Prime Minister and has to stay in England? Possibly. Hello to Sean in Somerset. Why did I do that? That's where my parents lived. Afternoon, Jez. What is this about the Iranian sex toy smuggler being allowed to stay? What a joke. Could we not slip him in the back... Could we not slip him out the back door, or would the ECHR put the skids on the idea? It all seems very dark and dingy to me. Sean in Somerset, you dirty man. Stefan in Bromley. After the sex toy judgment, I bet his lawyers are vibrating with excitement. Yes, brilliant. You really are at it this afternoon. 87222. Start your message with the word talks. 4:30. There's so much on the political agenda or the social agenda, whatever you want to talk about. It's your show as ever, my friends. Now, 0344 499 1000. Delighted. Next guest today, head of campaigns at Popular Conservatism. You try saying that. Andrew Allison, a very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm all right. Ryan's quite a steadying influence in a sea of madness, and he says to me, this is what he does, I think Andrew would prefer to talk about Quangos and the BBC than he would about the Iranian sex toy smuggler. So I obviously am going to ask you straight away about a country that says that an Iranian asylum seeker who's got an illicit sex toy smuggling business can stay in this country, Andrew Allison, because he would go skint if he went back to Iran, where those sorts of things are frowned upon. We are turning it into a bloody laughingstock, aren't we, my friend?
Well, it is. It's a little bit like the McDonald's story, you know, where the child wouldn't eat McDonald's in Albania. Imagine, I don't think they even have McDonald's in Albania, so
probably
I think
why they didn't want to go back.
There, wouldn't they, sir?
But you know, we make a joke about it, and I do it quite deliberately. But if you step back from that and you think, you can stay here, you can find yourself some warped left-wing lawyer who the taxpayer's going to pay for to argue the toss about something so wrong, And yet I go back to, Andrew, there's people here who are really, really struggling, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. And these stories seem to be coming out every week, don't they? You seem to be commenting on it. Everyone in the media seems to be commenting on it. And the British people are getting more and more angry, genuinely angry about these sort of stories, and yet nothing ever gets done by government ministers.
Well, we'll keep talking about it here. Let's talk to you about a couple of things I know that are I'm going to say close to your heart. How can the BBC be close to anybody's heart? I don't have a problem with this new man. Samir Shah, by the way, is the new chairman of the BBC. I have a problem that he decided to instigate a sort of internal sort of tribunal-ish report to look at what he calls unacceptable behaviour at work, or people running their mouths off, Mr Lineker maybe. But I don't like, it's like the Met Police I criticise when they do these internal inquiries. You shouldn't mark your own homework. When there are problems inside an organisation, I always believe it should be independent. Obviously the Hugh Edwards scandal was disgusting, a paedophile walking free and still getting his pension from the BBC. But the report has come back to Samir Shah. He says he's going to draw a line in the sand. He's told presenters today, after this, let me state it clearly, if you think you're too big a star or too important to live by the values of this organisation, not only are you wrong, but you will find out the consequences of such. Well, it's basically said, the report, Andrew, that a small number of BBC stars and managers behave unacceptably and bosses often fail to tackle them. That doesn't go far enough, does it, really? I mean, that probably happens in most businesses. But for me, it's not really... I could be wrong here. I'm on many occasions, it's not really about individuals. It's about an organisation that's supposed to be an independent state broadcaster that has an ideology and a belief and seems to push that onto people, although so many people now don't want it. That's how I see it.
We're going to be discussing Quangos a little later in the interview, Jeremy, and I wish I had a tenner for every time a government minister has said we're going to have a bonfire of the Quangos, and it never happens. I also wish I had a tenner for every time someone senior at the BBC says, well, lessons have been learned and we will make changes, because they never seem to. Everything to do with Hugh Edwards was completely wrong. He should not have been suspended on full pay. There must have been a clause in his contract somewhere that said if you bring the corporation into disrepute, then you're out on your ear for a while without pay. But no, they continue to pay it, and then they've tried to reclaim it back. There's obviously huge problems in the BBC, and I agree with you completely. What has been said by the new chairman is nowhere near far enough to solving the problems that there are.
Just looks to me like it's window dressing, and I think the whole organisation, don't get me wrong, 60 years ago, I remember when we got our first telly, it was about 8 or 9. The BBC was everything. It was drama, it was documentary, it was news-based. Yes, of course the rest of the world commercially has caught up, but there's that sort of belief nowadays, you know this from a commercial point of view, that you have to prove your worth for people to listen, to get the figures to say to advertisers. To me, the BBC doesn't have to make the effort that so many of the rest of us have to do to justify their existence, and alongside that has been allowed to grow this apathy, this ideology that I don't believe puts them in tune with the majority of people, and yet still they're getting £170-something a year from most people who don't want to break the law, and I would never condone that. But to me, it's just... It can't carry on like that. It's just not sustainable as a business model. And really, if you look at its figures, it isn't what it was.
No, it's not what it was. It's nowhere near what it was, not when I was growing up as a child. The BBC really is clinging on to an analogue funding system in a digital world. It's holding on to the licence fees, apron strings. Now, if the BBC is as good as the BBC likes to tell us it is, then it really wouldn't have a problem going out into the big, wide commercial world, would it?
And proving with its programmes that it was actually good enough to be picked. But it isn't, and it knows that.
But it isn't, and it isn't, and it isn't. And that is the problem with the BBC. And I cannot see that the licence fee will be around in about 20 years' time.
No,
I mean, I didn't think it was going to be around now, about 10 years ago, yet it's still there. And I think whilst we have a Labour government, it certainly will remain there, but not Not that the Conservatives are any better, because they've had an opportunity. They had an opportunity for nearly 14 years to try and solve some of the problems of the BBC and never really did anything about it.
But you have government after government that says it's going to do one thing and do the other. And here's on to the next part of our discussion, and this is something that really resonates with so many people. Again, I paint the picture of how difficult it is for so many in this country. Quangos, we'll get you to explain more, but hundreds of public officials, bosses, whatever, were paid more than our Prime Minister last year, sparking calls for this government to speed up its promised bonfire of Quangos. The Labour government, a bonfire of Quangos, has got to be the biggest pile of rubbish I've ever heard. They love a Quango, they love a report, they love a bleeding committee. It's like Jurgen, who runs GB Energy. He's got no office and no staff. He's on 200 grand a year, and nobody quite knows what Jurgen at GB Energy does. And that all doesn't make sense, any of it, does it?
None of it makes sense. Labour has promised to get rid of some Quangos, but has managed to create about a dozen and a half new ones since they came into power. We're talking about the salaries maybe of some of them. Yes, I mean, some of them it does seem high salaries, but it's not so much that I'm bothered about. It's why do they exist? Yeah. And how accountable are they to ministers? I mean, we had the story from the Sentencing Council a few weeks ago, where the Justice Secretary said, no, you cannot discriminate on grounds of ethnicity, etc. And the Sentencing Council said, well, thank you for your strongly worded letter, but we're going to ignore you.
So who do they think they are? If I was in charge, I'd just dissolve them straight away.
This is the problem. It proves that the government are not in charge until they said, well, we are going to legislate, which is fine. The government's realising that it does have some powers over these Quangos, but it had to threaten to legislate.
But I would look at the reason these Quangos are set up in the first place, and you know, you're the expert, but am I right or am I wrong to say that the reason so many government ministers and departments set up Quangos is because they don't want to make a bloody decision about anything? So it's like kicking the can down the road and saying, oh, I'll get a report on it or a Quango on it. And the Quango spends 5 years talking complete crap, gets paid hundreds of thousands of pounds, and then comes back and says to the government, oh, you should be doing that, or you shouldn't be doing that. And then the next government's in and they ignore it. It's a waste of money, man.
Ministers love Quangos for that very reason that you've just stated, Jeremy. It allows them to say, well, it's not our decision to make. Yeah, it's up to whichever Quango it happens to be. But I mean, why some of them even exist, I do not know. I mean, what I picked out of this Taxpayers Alliance report that came out today is the Construction Industry Training Board. You'd think the Construction Industry Training Board was something that was paid for by the construction industry, but no, it's a Quango. Its chief executive's paid £177,500. Now, I didn't know anything about it, so I went online, and it's just unveiled a business plan, and it's got 3 key pillars, and the first pillar is to inspire and enable diverse and skilled people into construction. And then it's saying it wants the construction industry to have the skills to meet current and future needs. Fine. But why is it a Quango? Why do taxpayers have to pay for it? And then when you look at the sheer amount of Quangos and the compliance costs for business, that runs into billions. Yeah, we've got hundreds of millions of pounds for taxpayers who are funding these things, but the compliance costs runs into billions for business. And then, as I said earlier on in the interview, you've got the accountability argument here. Ministers should be making decisions, because we can kick ministers out of office through general elections. We can't kick Quango crats even. Easy for me to say. Quango crats out of office either, can we?
Oh, do you know what? That's going to be forever. Quango, yeah. No, mate, I agree with you. And I think the ideology, we've got to move on, is that actually it's because ministers don't want to make decisions. They want to blame somebody else, and they give too much power, and it costs too much money. And I go back to something I keep saying, and I know I repeat myself, Andrew, and it's great to have you on again. It's about priorities. They prioritise not making a decision by pushing it onto somebody else. They prioritise allowing illegal migrants to stay in this country for fear of upsetting people. And they make their own people, sorry whether people like this or not, back of the queue. And resentment is building. And I'm not the person who's going to sit here and say, we should do this, we should do that. Everybody has their own feelings, but one gets the feeling that there is a groundswell of increasing annoyance amongst tax-paying, law-abiding people who have lived in this country all their lives, who feel like they're about 8th class in the line. I really believe that, pal. Would you agree with that, just to finish?
Well, yes. I mean, if a party promises X and voters vote for X, but they end up with Y, then they're going to get very annoyed. And that's basically what has happened. It's happened with immigration, where we're going to bring immigration down to the tens of thousands, David Cameron said. That never happened. I mean, net immigration's running at the several hundreds of thousands. If politicians fail to deliver on their promises, then the voting public is going to get extremely annoyed, which is why it doesn't surprise me that Reform is doing particularly well in the polls. And of course, we've got a real poll coming up.
Well, we can't. Look, I don't mean to jump in, but I have to be really careful because of those elections, yes. Andrew. You know that. I really appreciate you being on. Head of campaigns, popular conservatism, Andrew Allison. Always good to have you on. Drama here at Talk Towers. Jodie pinned to the window, not for the reasons that you might have thought, pinned to the window because there is a helicopter buzzing outside. Buzzing, obviously, relevant to what we've talked about already today. What is it there for? I think it's going to take somebody away, maybe an illegal migrant. Maybe a sex toy smuggling illegal migrant is going to be whisked away in a helicopter to a five-star hotel for a weekend of debauched pleasure. I'm talking rubbish. Back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back out of Julia at 10. Mike Graham's Morning Glory, the only way to wake up. 6 a.m. Monday to Friday, exclusive to Talk. This is Drive with JK. Your calls on the way, 344 499 1000. The main news story on this show is an Iranian sex toy smuggler has used a left-wing lawyer to convince a court in England that he should stay and get refugee status because vibrators and that stuff in an Islamic country like Iran not allowed. His business would fail, he wouldn't have any money, his family wouldn't be able to eat, so we've allowed him to stay. Mike in Somerset, I love your honesty. Jez, my wife and I were actually caught taking sex toys in to Dubai for personal use. Worrying at the time, but no serious repercussions other than the embarrassment of being paraded through the airport with said toys clearly on display. Brilliant. This criminal needs to be sent back to whence he came from, ideally with some well-inserted toys. Well done, Michael in Somerset. Stephen says, I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe. Rachel says, I think it's time we have a contest weekly for the most outrageous defence to remain in the UK that the ECHR allows. Well, Rachel, you can get Migrant of the Day on Morning Glory with the legend that is Mike Graham, where the stories become more bizarre by the minute. Bernie is in Enfield. I think this sex toy smuggling story, Jez, has reached its climax. Brilliant, well done. Another Stephen, how can these migrants be allowed to have appeal after appeal until they get the answer they want? Surely one appeal and that's it. Ah, Stephen, yeah, but there are people in this country that would like 47 more Brexit referendums. That's what the world's like. We got a voice note. Chloe, go!
So the government wants to cut down on student visas while simultaneously trying to agree a free movement for 18 to 30-year-olds from Europe, whilst at the same time, down in Dover yesterday and today, they're absolutely pouring in via the Border Force free ferry service from Calais to Dover.
Couldn't agree more. That's what's wrong with us. The hour of a lie, don't get me on it. Let's go to the phone lines. Harrow, Herbie, how are you?
Very well, Jeremy. How are you this afternoon?
Can I just ask you a question? As you grow up, when you became aware of things, what was it like being named after a car?
No problem. No problem. My dad was the same name. Unfortunately, I was junior, and I had no problems at all, Jeremy. None at all.
It's better than Jeremy, isn't it? Jeremy's such a crap name.
Yeah, but I won't go down that road, Jeremy.
No, you're fine. I like that. From a man named after a car, I won't go down that road. Herbie, what you got for me? Couple of minutes. What you got?
Oh, come on, Jeremy. How the hell... Look, these people can come over in droves because they know they're going to get away with anything. If they got an excuse, they've got a judge that's out of control, has got no idea of what's happening in the world, and they will be able to stay here regardless of what the criminality that they committed was. It's just beyond belief.
Well, let me ask you something calmly. I sit here every day and listen, everybody knows I'm approaching 60 and I have quite set views, but I'm also prepared to have a debate. What I can't understand is why the powers that be in control, whilst acknowledging that we are better off than many people in the world, wait for it, and we've always been morally there and we've always done the right thing. Right now, cost of living, Brexit, whatever you want to say, things are really tough. Energy prices are going through the roof. In fact, I think energy, we talk at immigration, I think energy will be central to the next election, and we've got a government that promised cheap energy and it'll go through the roof because they're mad net zero zealots. Why cannot people understand that for people like you and me and millions of people across the UK, it is simply not fair to allow people to come into this country and have the things that we are all having taken away from us. That is not racist. It is not in any way being disrespectful. It is simply a factual comment. But we get attacked for saying it, Herbie.
Well, the problem is, Jeremy, as I said, these judges do not live in the real world. They don't have these people around them. They do not know what is going on in life itself. They haven't got a clue of what life's all about. They don't live in the day-to-day world like the rest of us. We know what goes on, we see what goes on, but what can you show me? You've got lawyers that are on good money making these people be able to stay here because they have a good defence or some sort of excuse that keeps them here. It's beyond belief, Jeremy. I think the world's gone potty and we're heading for a disaster. I can see it coming. Revolution's just round the corner. People have had enough.
I don't know about a revolution, but listen, Herbie and Harrow, thank you very much indeed. We're going to try and cram more calls in. Listen, keep them coming. We'll store them up. Stu in Didcot will get you. 0344 499 1000. We talk drive.
They're responsible, many of them, for delivering some very important public services, an important area of policy. Some of them, unfortunately, are responsible for funding the absolute guff that we see time and time again from central government. And one of the things that people vote for when they vote in general elections is for change and for ministers that are able to enact that democratic mandate. But Labour ministers that have come in since the election have found that when they're pulling levers, nothing is actually happening, and that's because so much of this power has devolved to this massive body of Quangocrats.
You had to be busy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I wish you could hear what goes on in the break. At 9 minutes to 5, we're live across the UK. JK on drive, 0344 499 1000. This story, the Iranian sex toy smuggler wins the right to stay in Britain because apparently his business will go bankrupt in Iran, where sex toys aren't allowed. So we've let him stay because we're so nice. Mark on the Isle of Wight says, Jez, the length that some folks will go to make some money. Donna in Birmingham, I can't stop laughing at this show this afternoon. I can't believe this is going on. This once great nation, the sex toy smuggler, it's like a bloody Monty Python sketch. He's been a very naughty boy. Do you remember that? Do you remember that sketch in there where they follow John Cleese through the streets? They're all going, Jesus, 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 and he runs in his house and his mum leans out the door and goes, he's not Jesus, he's a very naughty boy now, off. Hello, Jamie Jenkins. We'll go, but see what we do on this show. Political and economic commentator. A very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Oh, good, Jeremy. How are you doing?
Oh, come on, mate. You need to smile a bit more. I've gone from Monty Python to you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Just, these bonkers stories about these Iranians. Yeah, what's the world coming to?
I mean, that's the point, mate. I'm like, I know it sounds bizarre, and we hear about Nugget Gate, and we hear about, I can't go. We're allowing a man who shouldn't be here because his business would be illegal in Iran, and that would impact on him and his family. And yet waspy women, pensioners, veterans, farmers are being screwed, and they wonder why the people are getting angry.
And what we'll see in the next week, there's some great weather across the country, Jeremy. We're probably going to see another 1,000 or so coming across this in the next week or so. More court cases and all this absolute nonsense that's going on in this country.
I don't understand it, mate, but we never fear, because Sir Keir Starmer has today said, I'm going to unveil a crackdown on immigration after this week's local elections. Jamie, not I'm going to have an idea from 10 months ago when I said I'm going to smash the gangs, which hasn't happened, but I'm going to do it after the elections. Now, we have to be careful because of Purdah with the elections, but there are certain parties that are saying we will deal with immigration. To me, Starmer, and I'd love your take on this, is one of those people who says what he wants or feels that he's got to say at a given moment.
Yeah, well, whichever you saw in the run-up to the last general election, so put the local elections to one side, there's local matters to discuss on that. But when you're looking nationally across the country, obviously immigration's a big part of the public debate around that. And you're right, what Starmer tends to do is he will make statements basically in terms of what he thinks people want to hear. But ultimately, Jeremy, we need actions, not words. And statistician by trade, and the data doesn't lie. We've seen the small boat crossings go up under Starmer's watch. It's getting worse this year. We're on course for a record number. This adds more and more to the taxpayer. We've got all these different houses that people are being put into as well. We've got all the hotels that are filled up. People are rightly damn fed up of it all now, Jeremy.
But what happens? What happens? You wait. I mean, this is what I don't get. You know more about politics than I do. Are there politicians, are they so in ivory towers that they don't give a toss what the people think? Because it's overwhelmingly obvious to me, just by sitting here, that there is a growing resentment, anger, disillusionment and genuine need and desire for something to be done. And yet they're almost impervious to what we say. They don't seem to want to listen, man.
Well, when you talk about the general election, we're way, way off the next general election. So nationally, if they don't do nothing now, Keir Starmer said he's going to do something. You come up with a plan after these local elections. We've had no plan for the last year. We had kind of a plan with Rishi Sunak with the Rwanda deal, but that wasn't a real plan. Them probably put all that in place, didn't get it in place before the election. They had all this time, the Tory party, to sort that out.
True.
So people say they're going to sort things out, but it always gets kicked down. And then that's just the small boat crossings that we're talking about. You're talking about the legal migration. David Cameron said he was going to get it to the tens of thousands. Theresa May said. We go back successive governments and successive leaders across the country, Jeremy. They've all said things and nobody has delivered.
And
I
think
that's the point now.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I think the British public, they went through like the expenses scandal and people were pretty disillusioned. I think it's not about disillusionment now, Jay. I think it's about people going, well, hold on a minute. We've got politicians of all parties, the uniparty idea. They seem to all say the same thing. It's almost to me like the British public has woken up to the understanding that politicians say things to get elected and then don't do what they say they're going to do. And maybe in the past, again, being careful because of the local elections, maybe in the past because it was from one to the other, there were two parties, maybe that was the case. But there seems to be a few... look at the Liberal Democrats did well in the last general election. And so I think people are suddenly thinking, actually, my vote can count. One thing I want to say very quickly to you, which we haven't talked about yet, millions of public sector workers, including nurses and teachers, should be given pay rises of 4%. Now, whether I think that's right or wrong, last week we discovered that Rachel Thieves, the world's worst chancellor, was already being told after just 9 months by the IMF that she's got no room to wiggle, that she's either got to raise taxes or destroy still further our public services, in brackets which are being further screwed by illegal migration, close brackets. Where's she going to get that money from? I said it earlier in the show, Jamie. When I was a kid, when Labour was in power, they printed money, inflation went to 30% of the country was bankrupted. Their idea is to go, oh no, we're into growth, so we're going to upset everybody who's successful, either tax them or tell them to bugger off from the country, none of which works. And they will skint this country again, won't they?
Yeah, well, what she probably needs to do is get on the phone to Gordon Brown and try and plant some more magic money trees. That's pretty much what we need. But the figures that we had out last week, Jeremy, where we borrowed £152 billion last year. That was 15 billion above forecast, and part of the reason for that was because of the public sector pay increases of last year, not the current ones. Now, what the public need to remember is you only have a public sector if there's a private sector to pay for it. And with the current way that the economy is trundling along, with all these tax rises, people will be losing jobs as part of that. You can't fund the public sector without a private sector unless you have more borrowing. So That's the conundrum that the government's kind of created itself. They could have gone a different course over the last year. But you're talking about Rachel Thieves or Rachel Reeves. I think the Rachel Thieves is a much more apt thing, Jeremy, in terms of what you're saying. She's stealing from us with our tax and not basically putting it back into the right places. And that's why the economy is in such a mess.
And why I'm angry, and I have to be careful because of the local elections, is because people were duped. They bought this crap. So bad were the Tories. Let's make that point, that the British people had stopped listening and they bought this, it's going to be different. No, every socialist government this country has ever had in the history of our history has either printed money, right, or lent or borrowed or raised taxes on people who are successful, and we end up skint. There was that note from Liam Byrne, if you remember the last time, the Empire saying there's no money left. It wasn't a joke, that's a fact. I don't think the next year looks that great, but Jay will keep talking about it. We'll keep pushing. Jamie Jenkins, thank you, political and economic commentator. Almost 5 o'clock, we're live across the UK. JK on Drive, we go back to this story that seems to have grabbed you. An Iranian sex toy smuggler gets to stay in the United Kingdom because his business would not work in Iran, where sex toys aren't allowed. Hello to Mark, who says rampant. That's our laws on immigration nowadays. I get it. And it was Graham Chapman, not John Cleese, that played Brian in The Life of Brian. Just saying, says Terrence. All right, smarty pants. Listen, if you want to be part of this vain attempt at a radio programme, simples. See what I did there? 0344 499 1000. Dial us now. You can text 87222. Start your message with the word talk as ever. But while you do that, we'll head to the news at 5. It's next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just gone 5 o'clock. We're live across the UK. This is, of course, Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. And I wish to God you could hear what goes on in the ad break. Jodie at her finest. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Drive, where the main news story of the day. I understand that Starmer has said he's going to crack down on immigration. Take a breath. After the local elections. Of course you are, you lying git. I understand there's many people, like the residents of Datchet, next to Windsor, where I used to live, who are up in arms that there are migrants rammed into hotels. There are criminal activities taking place. This isn't propaganda, by the way, before you lefties get on the phone. This is a fact. Urination in the street, crime, abuse, negating just a nice place to live and many people wanting to get the hell out. You might want to talk about how this government will end up in more trouble because there'll be public sector strikes because they won't be able to afford what their unions demand. But for us, because we set the bar very low here on Drive, my friends, my favourite story of the day is the Iranian asylum seeker who argued that he could not be deported because he was a sex toy smuggler. And if he was sent back to Iran, where under Islamic law sex toys are illegal and there's a ban on bringing them in, his business would suffer. He would run out of his money and his family wouldn't eat. And thus the kind-hearted people of the United Kingdom's legal system have said, "Oh, Mr. Vibo smuggler, please do stay. Please do stay." And Kevin Shrewsbury, I thought, summed it up brilliantly when he said, "I wonder, as many of my friends will wonder, why have I gone into Churchill? When discussions were taking place, Jez, about this chap stopping in this country, do you think there was a mass debate about it? I don't know. I have no idea." 0344. Jodie's laughing. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Also, Quangos. Oh, yes. The Labour Party said we're going to get rid of these useless Quangos because there seem to be lots of them. Lots of people earn lots of money, and then they set up another 50. Stuart's in Didcot. Stu, good afternoon. You're on Talk Drive. What you got for me?
Good afternoon, Ted. I'd just like to say that your show, the whole Talk radio shows, are the best thing since sound. They really are. It's refreshing to hear somewhere you can actually hear common sense without the risk of being, or the threat of the fear of being arrested and sent to prison.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That's the plan. Although, hold on, the police have arrived. I'm off. No, I'm joking. Crack on. What you got?
Yeah. As for your favourite story, I really don't think I should rise to that comment anymore because I think most people already have done the best thing for it, and I'm still laughing at some of the comments now.
Thank you.
Moving on to another phallic symbol, I'd like to point out I got a new job on the 1st of April, and I did think it was a bit of a con and I wasn't going to get it, but it is a good job, and I'm quite happy with it. On my CV, on my application, I had to put all my details down, and it actually told me that if I lied or didn't tell the truth, I could be instantly dismissed. So could somebody please tell me why the other phallic symbol still has his job ruined in the country?
Well, not only that, how does Rachel Thieves, who said she was an economist when she was nothing more than an accounts clerk, why does Jonathan Reynolds, our business secretary, who told everybody that he was a qualified solicitor when he wasn't, the front bench in this government is full of people who have lied the whole time. I remember, and listen, I was quite outspoken in my support for Boris Johnson, and certainly over the last few months there have been many things that he didn't do, and I get that, the net zero thing. But he was slaughtered one day when he stood up in the House of Commons. He was slaughtered by people on this station for daring to say to Dreary Starmer, you didn't do anything about Savile, did you, when you were the Director of Public Prosecutions? That's come home to roost. He didn't do his job properly. He is, in my mind, and people say to me, Jez, you've got to be a little bit kinder. Kind to what? A man who's lied to get to where he is, who's looked, not me, but genuinely nice, hard-working people, pensioners, waspy women, for example, farmers, whose farms have been passed down generation. He has lied to them because this man might have free suits and free glasses from Lord Alley, but he is nothing more than your typical socialist whose only policy, in my mind, is to tax the rich. And that's not how you make a country work, pal. It isn't.
That's correct. That is absolutely right. But I don't know how he managed to stay in power. It should be sacked, dismissed from his job instantly.
I read a really interesting article over the weekend that said the scary thing for this country is that many in the Labour Party do not believe that Keir Starmer is left-wing enough, which is frightening, isn't it? Listen, good to have you on, Stuart. Keep spreading the word in Didcot. Good for you. 7 minutes past 5. Yeti. Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. Yeah, I get it. Thanks very much. Yeah. We have been talking about that story. Ladies and gentlemen, let's up it a bit. Certainly Stuart and Didcot upped it after my pathetic attempt at the first hour. We're delighted to have former MEP Brexiteer, chairman of Great British PAC, and we have to talk about the new leader of the Integrity Party. We haven't... Tell me about the Integrity Party. Tell me more. Where have I been? I've been dealing with Iranian sex toy smugglers. What's happening?
Just to be clear, I'm not leader of the party. It's a party that was set up by two gentlemen in November. I'll explain. There's a perfectly justifiable reason why you might think I'm leader, but I'm not. It was a party that was set up by two gentlemen in November who felt that actually Nigel Farage was pivoting towards the kind of globalist elite form of governance. And they've been pressing me since November to do something with the party, to set up a genuinely pro-British party. And I'd been saying no and no and no. And then eventually, of course, Rupert Lowe and Nigel fell out. And a vexatious criminal complaint was made against Rupert Lowe. And I think an opportunity has opened up on in the political landscape, frankly, for a party that actually stands true, stands behind its people, stands behind its policies. And so I said to these two gentlemen, fine, I'll have a go at doing something with it. And I'm in the process at the moment, Jeremy, of putting a constitution in place, identifying people to lead it, run it, because it's never going to be about one individual. It should never be about one individual. It should be about the breadth and depth of people you can bring to a party. That's why, parties are called parties, because they should bring a collective with them.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
One of the things that really interests me is if you look at how appalling this government is, Ben, for me, they should be here for the taking already. However, we have a landscape made up of a Tory party in freefall who I think will struggle for 10 years to win back people's trust. And I mean this genuinely because of how far they had fallen out of favour. We've got Reform that is on the crest of a wave, but there are simmering concerns, rather criticisms from people like you and others who have left saying this is a one-man party, it needs democratisation. Now we're talking about the Integrity Party and all about the Rupert Lowe situation. His vehicle was, and people will agree with this, some will disagree, that to get elected, Nigel Farage has moved away from the language and away from the things that matter, and we're actually at the forefront of what Reform was all about. Let's say there is a niche for integrity and a niche for Reform and a niche for the Tory party. Is not the big fear, as we splinter into more right-wing organisations, that this is going to allow this bunch of, I think, real proper hardline socialists back in for a second 5 years, pal? Seriously.
So, I think obviously the priority has to be to get rid of the Labour Party in 2029, but 2029 is a way off.
Yep.
And it is vital that before that, the Conservative Party, and to the extent that Reform is able to do it, come up with policies and, first of all, an ideology and then policies that support it, which put this country first, which actually genuinely tackle the problems we've got with our borders, both legal migration as well as illegal migration, that create cheap energy for this country, that reduce regulations, reduce taxes and so on. And the narrative has to be set before we can have a real genuine tilt at the electoral landscape. And so my aim with this new party, which will be renamed, by the way, as well, this name won't be Integrity when it launches, but my aim with this new party is to set the narrative, to make sure that Nigel Farage knows that he can't play political expediency with the hopes and aspirations of the British people, that he has to actually deliver on being the kind of persona that they believe him to be, rather than creating that persona and then actually doing something else.
Is this party and the people behind it an attempt to manoeuvre Mr. Farage to a position that you all feel more comfortable about?
him and Kemi Badenoch and anyone else, and then the responsibility will come to all of them, all of us who are in the political landscape in an electoral way in 2028, to check what the hell's going on, in each constituency, and make sure that Starmer doesn't get back into office. But we've got to get the narrative right first. And I'm afraid Farage is not getting the narrative right. And Kemi is holding her cards so close to her chest.
That's true.
I don't know where the Conservative Party is.
Let's talk about narrative. You said a couple of times, you said narrative, and you said that with what you're doing with integrity is about setting the narrative. Yet again today, I'm struggling on a daily basis not to implode. Our dreadful Prime Minister, who, and I keep saying it, to my mind, a proper socialist. And when I mean proper socialist, I mean got one policy, tax the rich. They go on about growth, but they're going to scare everybody who's made anything away. They're going to destroy medium and small-sized businesses. They're going to give their union mates money. There'll be strikes. There'll be uprisings. There'll be public sector strikes. The country's on his arse. He says today, because apparently he wants to jump in and cut off at source the right's rise about migration, whether that's Reform or the Conservatives or whatever, he said, I will be unveiling a crackdown on immigration, pause, after this week's local elections. This is yet more bull from a man who said, I'm going to smash the gangs. This man provides sound bites to win elections, right? He doesn't come up with, in my humble opinion, a plan, speak about it, take criticism on it, push it through despite opposition, paper over things, change things, listen, adapt, whatever. He says what he thinks the electorate wants to hear. That is no way to govern a country, is it? There's no conviction in that, man. None.
No, none whatsoever. The only conviction he's got is that he is anti-British. And you mentioned left versus right a bit in this conversation. Actually, the split in politics, I think, is between those who love this country, believe in this country, want to protect, promote and celebrate this country and everything that once made it great. And I put myself firmly in that camp, and I put you in that camp.
Yeah.
And then there's a camp like Starmer and others who actually hate this country. They hate where this country came from. They hate the history of this country.
Why don't they sod off and live somewhere else? Why don't they go and live somewhere else then?
Well, actually, Jeremy, they're trying to bring somewhere else here. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
The desire to hand over power to Brussels, take down our borders, which he's about to do, hand over. On the 19th of May, Starmer is going to fly out to Brussels and he's going to sign us in to military subjugation by Brussels. He's going to give youth mobility, which will be the thin end of the wedge for freedom of movement again with the European Union. He's going to align us in phytosanitary and sanitary regulations with the EU, making future trade deals extremely difficult. He is going to do he's going to give over more of our fishing to the EU. All of this is going to happen on the 19th of May, and he'll call it a reset of our relationship with the EU. What he's doing is trashing the United Kingdom. He doesn't believe in the United Kingdom. He doesn't like being British. He wants to be part of something bigger, something where the shame that he feels about being British can be hidden. And that the split is between people like him on one side and people like you and me on the other. And we've got to make sure that we have a unashamedly self-confident pro-British agenda which we can drive through. It's high time we recovered the United Kingdom from the grip of people like him.
Couldn't agree more. I was saying this earlier in the show when we were talking about his, I'm going to do something about migration after the local elections. I used to live in Windsor on the Long Walk, as you know, and right next door to Windsor is Datchet.
I love Datchet. I used to love Datchet.
Well, you're not going to love Datchet now. There's a hotel. I used to get my Indian takeaway, literally, 3 doors up. It's called the Manor Hotel. There are 370 migrants there. And for people who think this is unfair, it is not. You've never been to Datchet. I have. There are 370 of these asylum seekers. Everybody in the local community is saying the same things. They walk the streets, cars are being attacked and keyed, and stuff's being stolen from shops. There's abusive behaviour. People are drunk on the green. There's the people smoking weed. The police are doing absolutely nothing. These are not, by the way, for all those lefty lovies, these are not asylum seekers with their families having escaped war-torn wherever. This is young men who've thrown their passports in the sea that the government doesn't know what to do with. They're criminals who are being paid to stay in a 4-star hotel. And some people will laugh at what I'm about to say. There's people who have retired there, right, who wanted to enjoy their life by the River Thames, who now want to sell Ben Habib, and they can't sell their damned houses because of what's happening. And what does that say to, thanks for working all your life, paying tax, living your life correctly, you want a bit of retirement? No, because we're doing this. And for all those people that go, oh, you don't understand, what about thinking about the people that have worked all their lives and deserve to retire in peace and tranquility?
And are British citizens, a part of civil society in this country, being effectively having their the benefits of their citizenry removed by people who shouldn't be here in the first place. I got an email from a former Royal Marine today. He said 200 Royal Marines could stop those dinghies dead in, well, I shouldn't use that word, would stop those dinghies absolutely in the channel and turn them around. He said, give me a mandate, 200 of my
There's
former
no
Marines,
will
we'll
to do it.
it.
And I don't, this is where, even my wife says, Jez, you're like a dog with a bone. I don't understand why there isn't a political ability in the governing class, hear me out, whether it's the Tories, to go, that's what the people want. And if we don't actually implement what the British people want, we're toast. They're not buying rhetoric anymore. They're not.
Those who govern us don't care about the country. That's the point. There isn't even a desire to stop the dinghies. They don't. They see immigrate. One of the great benefits, if you hate this country, you hate its culture, and you want to change the nature of the British people, the best way to do it is mass immigration, because you lose the culture, you lose the ability to feel proud of the nation state, you lose all of that nation statehood, which was absolutely in our DNA when we were brought up. And that's why it's no surprise that 40% of those polled, I think there was a poll of the youth a few weeks ago, 40% said that they wouldn't be prepared to fight for the United Kingdom. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Tim's just texted us, actually, from Suffolk. He says, I love my country and I serve my country. I wouldn't now, I'm embarrassed. How frightening is that? How frightening is that?
That is precisely what Starmer wants. He wants us to lose confidence in this country, to lose faith. He hates this country. Honestly, that's what it is. He wants Brussels because it gives him that blanket of ideology which allows him not to look back at our imperial past, Winston Churchill and all these other things that they hold in contempt, and say, well, we've moved on from that now. We're not the United Kingdom that used to do all of that. Well, actually, I'm proud of the United Kingdom that did all of that. I'm damn proud of our imperial past.
I want to tell Keir Starmer and all his cronies they wouldn't damn well be here unless Churchill had done what Churchill did. And yes, of course, like Trump, he was flawed and people will jump up and down. I repeat to you what I told the story earlier. My father-in-law was having a conversation with one of his grandchildren, sweet kid, and she said, but they come over from war-torn countries. So he bit the bullet, and he said, and they come with their wives and their kids, and they have nothing. And he went, no, listen, they don't. They're young men. And if you were in a war-torn country, you wouldn't leave your wife and child. And also when you go to the first country, there wasn't a bomb raining down your head, you'd stay here. For me, the deterrent is simple, Ben. The deterrent should be we don't lose our humility. We don't lose our desire as a nation to do right by people who are less worse off, who are less better off than we are. But, underlined, we are at the moment, we have our backs to the wall, we're skint. And it seems to me remarkably unjust, unfair and short-sighted to say, I'm going to screw my own people so I can look good. Sorry, that's a really basic way of describing how I see what's happening. We need to get it's a bit like the NHS, oh, this great thing. No, just look at it through untinted spectacles. We cannot even afford the interest on the money that we owe, OK? So for me, right, the people that are paying for that, they get first dibs. And if that's, well, I've been called racist for saying that's not racist at all, it'd help anybody. But I also think that Betty and Berry, who's 70 and can't eat her house, should be ahead of some criminal coming from a country on a boat. And I'll say that until I'm blue in the face, and I don't care who hates me for it. I really don't.
It's a privilege to be a British citizen. It shouldn't be handed out as confetti, first of all. But those of us who've got British citizenship deserve then the protection of the state.
Yes.
You know, people say it's uncivilised not to let these people enter the the country. Well, I tell you what's uncivilized is allowing an assault on civil society in this country without any checks, without any attempt to check it. And this is where the Human Rights Act has gone completely mad, because people like Starmer can hang their hat on the Human Rights Act and say, well, it's the European Convention of Human Rights, it's the Human Rights Act, we have to do this, they have rights just like you do. No, they don't. We're British citizens. They're not. They're entering the country illegally. Suella Braverman had exactly the right idea. If you enter this country illegally, you will never be allowed to stay here. That has to be a rule. And you should be detained. And the same Royal Marine who texted me earlier said that instead of putting them up in hotels, they should be in tents behind wired fences. That's it. And we'll police them. And
when everybody, can I jump in, because I'm so with you, when everybody, and there will be people listening to that going, oh my God, that's awful. Let me just say this to you all very, very calmly, the doubters, right? The reason they come from France, encouraged, by the way, by the border officials of a country we're giving £500 million to do nothing, in my humble opinion, the reason they come from France to England, dear people, is they have to live in a tent on a beach in France, whereas here they end up in the Manor Hotel in Datchet with money in their pocket, causing all sorts of trouble, seeing a GP like that and a dentist like that, whilst people in Datchet, who have paid their taxes, are having their communities trashed, their houses trashed, their shops ransacked. That doesn't seem fair. Ben, listen, I want to hear more about when you've done your work with integrity. Come on and tell us about it. Promise?
Thank you, I will, for sure. Absolutely. Look forward to that.
Good man. Thank you, Ben Habib, former MET and Brexiteer, talking about this Integrity Party, another offshoot with Rupert Lowe. Loads to be decided about that. We'll certainly get the exclusive here on Talk when it happens. 5:23, we're live across the UK. So much to talk about, by the way. Whatever you want to talk about. I'm slightly concerned because next is Benedict Spence. Am I OK to talk to him about the Iranian sex toy smuggler? Do you think so? Yeah, I think those posh boys always have a dirty mind, don't they? Coming back in 3.
You know, our outcomes on this speak for themselves. You know, this is not you and I, Mike, or our listeners being party political. Just look at the outcomes relative to other developed countries, and our cancer outcomes, I'm afraid, are not good at all. And a lot of that is down to delays in diagnosis, and we're still experiencing a hangover from the total capitulation of the NHS to COVID as well at this point.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
5:25, we're live across the UK. This is JK on Drive. Thanks for tuning in, home of free speech and common sense. The main news story of the day, in my mind, is the Iranian asylum seeker who's argued that he can't be deported because he has a sex toy business. He's a smuggler. And ladies and gentlemen, he has won his legal battle to remain in your country. Yes, he has indeed, because he says that his activities, his illicit activities, smuggling vibrators and sex toys into this country, smuggling, let's just do that for a minute, smuggling, so it's against the law, wouldn't survive in Iran, where under Islamic law, sex toys etc., are illegal and are frowned upon. I'm sorry, Jodie's just said something that frankly is an extraordinary... I wish I could broadcast that, you dirty Gertie. Anyway, we move on. So he's going to stay here, because if he went home, right, his business, smuggling sex toys, wouldn't be allowed. Oh, God. I'm all for this sex toy seller to stay in the UK. We need entrepreneurs here, people who see an opportunity and fill the void, says Andy in Surrey. Did you like what I did with that, Ryan? Because with the next one, man, I'm struggling. You've left me like a dog. This is from I don't know who. And on this Iranian bloke, Rachel Thieves, because used some of his merchandise to fill her 22 billion black hole. That's an outrageous text, but it's my favourite one ever. 87222, start your message with the word talk. 0344 499 1000. We say a very good afternoon to a man who's posh. I'm not sure I can bring myself to say the word vibrator in front of him. Benedict Spence, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Oh, look at that. That was so James Bond. You went like this. Good afternoon, how are you? Let's... No, I'm not moving away from this story, Benedict. This is... If this doesn't sum up what's wrong with this country, then I am going to retire. Iranian sex toy smuggler can stay because his illicit business is deemed illegal in Iran, where this sort of stuff isn't allowed. I thought McNuggets were the low point. I mean, this takes the biscuit, doesn't it? Excuse the pun.
It does, rather. Not like the Iranians to turn down a man peddling WMDs, but, there we are. I mean, it's all sorts of excuses.
For anybody who missed that, he's implying that a certain sex toy could be deemed a weapon of mass destruction. Very good, very good there, Spence. Crack on.
It's just going to get worse all afternoon for as long as the story runs.
I mean,
you're right. It seems to be a sort of a humiliation ritual for the British state. How, for asylum seekers to almost come up with the most absurd reasons that they can possibly sneak past a member of the judiciary to see, could we get this one past? It's almost like a sort of a schoolboy practical joke.
Do you think they get a buzz from it?
I'm sure that there are some people who get a buzz for it, possibly in the legal profession.
I find it embarrassing, actually, and the stories in itself is so funny.
Yeah.
But the premise behind it, the fact that the British taxpayer is paying lawyers to allow this rubbish to happen, again, I always bring it back to it, whilst genuinely hard-working, tax-paying people in this country are absolutely screwed.
Quite literally getting a bit of a rogering, but that's by the by. It's again, sorry, this isn't going to get any better.
Join us. We're here all summer. Bridlington next week. Yeah, there we go. No, but you're right. It's and I think, I don't know about you, but I think that people are understandably getting just angrier by the day, pal.
They are, and especially, given the tour that you and I are going to do of, sort of parading these jokes is going to go around all the different towns of the UK where migrants are probably going to be housed by Serco. That could be the real, sort of sting in the tail to this particular joke, which is that, members of the public see people coming to this country illegally. The first act that they do is to break the law coming into this country, by a small boat across the channel. And then the more and more outlandish things and reasons why they can't be sent back. Of course, let's also be clear, there are lots of people who do come to this country who can't be sent back for very legitimate reasons. But the fact is that every week we get at least one story of something so outlandish that you'd have thought Evelyn Waugh wouldn't have put that in one of his novels, and yet here...
No, I'm with you, and of course, but no, don't fear. Be happy, be excited, because today our leader, Sakaya, says, and I quote, this is just tosh, isn't it? I'm going to unveil a crackdown on immigration. Pause. After this week's local election. So what, again, this sort of narcissistic rubbish, because he managed to pull it off, he managed to pull it off in the general election, and he said, and I quote, I will do this, I will do that. He looked farmers in the eyes, he looked waspy women in the eyes, and he blatantly lied. This is just a line. I get to the point where I think the British people are going to go, no, mate, I don't buy this anymore. I don't buy you. You say stuff to get a reaction, to if you like, move the dial, and it's all processed and it's all worked out with focus groups. But that's not genuine, it's not conviction, Benedict, is it?
No, it's not. And I think it's really interesting that you pick up on the fact that so much of Westminster politics nowadays is politics by focus group. Dominic Cummings, of course, revealed that for a long time ago, saying this is a disaster. This is the only thing on which policy is based, is people doing focus groups. And that's not reality. It might sound like clever politics, but clever politics, when it smashes up against reality, is not very clever at all, because beforehand, once upon a time, you could get away with this when it was just the Tories and Labour going at each other. But now you have this new phenomenon from out of nowhere, and many different opinions on the Reform Party, but they are there and they are creaming off support from both major parties. They don't even have to come up with particularly incisive policies. They just have to be there, and they're taking away support. And sooner or later, they're going to start taking seats as well on a massive scale.
You have that example today, which I'd love your opinion on, that we've talked about, which is, I used to live on the Long Walk in Windsor, and next door is Datchet, beautiful little sort of villagey town, little hamlet next to the River Thames. Despairing homeowners of houses in the leafy village of Datchet in the shadow of Windsor Castle say the introduction of asylum seekers to the local luxury hotel has made their houses impossible to sell and changed the area for the worst. 370 currently inside the Manor Hotel in Datchet. This is not made up for all the lefty lawyers. This is an utter... for them, it's a horrible situation. Rubbish everywhere, sitting in the middle of the street, smoking dope, being abusive, being raucous, shop thieving, pickpocket, all that. No, we're not being racist. We're telling you how it is. People who go, well, those rich people in Datchet, Sodom, we don't care about them. Well, they've worked all their lives. They have a right to a quiet and peaceful retirement, I would have thought. But oh no, their lives are in turmoil because of illegal migrants being allowed into this country willy-nilly.
Yeah, and a lot of the reasons and a lot of the laws that allow these people to stay in this country or come to this country in the first place are out of date. And that's something that has to be addressed, which is that we're dealing with human rights legislation that was set up in the aftermath of the Second World War, which, let's remember, we're getting close to the century mark of that. It's almost 80 odd years out since these things were implemented. They're not relevant for the modern world. They certainly weren't designed for people coming from the Middle East or Sub-Saharan Africa or Vietnam, as is sometimes the case. They come from so far afield. And what's, I think, made worse about all of this is you could almost get away with it when they were just being bussed into major cities. And to be honest, you couldn't really get away with it. People were beginning to move out of London and Birmingham and Bradford a long time ago. But now these people are being bussed into rural areas, and that causes major concerns because they are a lot more isolated. And if people think policing in cities is in a bit of a state at the moment, you should go to the countryside and ask local people about when was the last time they saw a bobby on the beat? When was the last time the local police station was open? Many of them, in fact, have been shut down. It's a real cause for concern. And if you want to take an example of actually what happens when you start bussing in hundreds of people to towns and villages of only 100 or so people, just look at what's happened in the Republic of Ireland over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Huge disruptions, huge amounts of anger. People were never consulted and just had entire communities dropped on their doorstep, and they don't know how to deal with them.
This is Donna in Birmingham. She's very worried about you. She said, has the lovely Benedict been trumped? He's looking very orange today. What's happened to him? I'm worried.
No, he's just got a light next. He's just got a light next to him. I can turn it off.
Benedict Trump is showing his true colours. So we've got
him. If I turned this light off, then I'd be a Bond villain. It would just be a black silhouette.
You'd be sat there with your cat on your lap. Just on the basis of talking about him saying he's going to deal with immigration, no, he's not. Talking about the way this country's going. I thought it was very interesting last week. I don't know if we talked about it when the IMF said to Rachel Thieves, you've got no room to wiggle, love, because you've messed up already. You've either got to raise taxes. Oh, you said you weren't going to. Not that you care if you lie. Or you've got to still further stretch the resources given to public services, which are being overstretched because you won't do anything about illegal migration. Today we discover that millions of public sector workers, teachers, nurses included, should be given, says a pressure group report, 4% minimum. As is pretty typical with any socialist government in this country, you promise everything, then you get into power and you realise, oh, we haven't got the money. So what we'll do is we'll print some. Oh, no, we don't do that anymore because inflation went to 30%. So what we'll do now is we'll just tax the rich a bit more. It's that one-dimensional. This country, in my humble opinion, you're much younger than me, young enough to be my son. We are going to have strikes, public sector strikes. We're going to have blackouts. We're going to have bins being not collected. We're going to have electricity shortages through ridiculous energy prices. There'll be problems with food because of what they're doing to the farmers. And it's not to paint a miserable picture, but this country, as is always the case under a Labour government, will go on a downward spiral. And for many people who voted for Labour, and many people who quite rightly didn't like the Tories at the end, they have not got a clue, have they, what's coming?
No, you're right. This is, again, it's very easy for us to sort of sound quite doom and gloom, but that is the trajectory that we're on. And it's not just you and me saying it, it's not just the IMF, it's newspapers that supported Labour at the last general election, the Guardian and the FT going, guys, I'm not sure this is a good idea. You know, when you're at that state and you look around and you look at the alternatives and you see that the Conservatives are not the solution as they currently stand. They will need to completely rip up their model and start again. But you also look at reform and you say, I'm not really sure that there's enough radicalism there. I'm not really sure they're bold enough. You know, there is
then you just very quickly, we have Ben Habib on. He talks about the Integrity Party and Rupert Lowe and how, you know, Farage has lost some of the rhetoric, and then you ask yourself the big question, can you be elected with that rhetoric? Is Farage, or has he moved a little bit more centrist to get elected? I would simply say this, I believe the British people are ready for conviction, and whether that conviction upsets some people on the path to victory, so bloody be it if it's the right answer to the problems this country faces. That's it.
But I think that this is right about Farage, and I think it's a mistake. I do think he's moving more to the centre because he fears upsetting the apple cart. He fears being perceived as being too populist, being too radical. So he wants to move to the centre because he thinks that's where the votes are. But he's making a mistake there because the votes are going to reform anyway. They were already starting to go there before.
You have to have the courage of your convictions, I think. Completely the courage of your convictions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the thing is he sees this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he's playing it safe because he doesn't want to fumble it just as the ball, if you like, comes loose from the back of the scrum. I think it's a mistake, but it's his party. He can do what he wants.
Whereas, and I know I always bring it back to him, but you know, love him or loathe him, and I keep saying it, there's much I don't like. Donald Trump said, that's my agenda. I'm not changing it. You can like it or lump it. It's about making your lives better, and that's what's going to happen. And one sits here, I'm sure you have the same, many people in this country, and think, we sort of need that. But politicians are so scared, and you're dead right. They're scared about what the focus group will say and how they'll be perceived, rather than Trump-esque, which is I don't care if 49% of the country hate me. This is what 51% voted for. The rest of you can do one. I'm going to crack on with what I said I was going to do. That's a democracy. And we haven't had, I didn't agree with a lot that he did, but Blair was like that, Thatcher was like that, conviction politicians who had a plan and said, you can sod it, I'm going to do what I promised I was going to do, whether it turned out right or not, right?
Yeah, I think those are the best examples probably of the sort of politician who would do very well in this current set of circumstances. I think in Europe we're a lot more cautious than we are in North America or South America, where of course you've had Javier Milei and Jair Bolsonaro recently come to power and lose power. But you know, we're seeing it in Italy with Meloni. We're seeing it in France with the Front National. They get closer every year. You see it with the AfD in Germany. Sooner or later, there's only so long that the established parties can keep on going, stick with us and it'll get better, and things keep getting worse before people go, we've had enough, because this simply isn't.
Do you not think, very quickly, do you not think we've reached that point in the United Kingdom, or am I living in a bubble? Because I absolutely believe we've reached this point, and if we haven't, we will well be there by 4 years' time, 1,000,000%.
I think if the right person or the right party were to come along, I think that people would back that person. I don't think that person yet, whoever that may be, runs a political party or is about to become leader. Genric is perhaps the only example that I can think of, but I don't think they're about to get rid of Kemi just yet.
Be very interesting. Benedict, really appreciate your time. Turn the orange light off very quickly. Let's have a look. Let's have a look without the Trump light. Oh, dear. Yes, the lights have gone out on your career. Benedict Spence, thank you very much indeed. 20 to 6, we're live across the UK. Talk is on 0344 419 1000. Text to 87222. Before we go to the break, very quickly, the Iranian sex toy smuggling story that has dominated this show today. He can't go home, and the judges agree with him because he's smuggling vibrators. That's his business. It wouldn't be allowed under Islamic law, so he's got to stay here. Dave Turner said, I think we should send the Iranian sex toy bloke home. I bought a Sex Master Pro off him, and it had a bloody UK plug. Back in 3.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
17 minutes to 6. Hello to Sandra Donaldson. She said, I'd like to wake up tomorrow morning and find that we have a government made up entirely of talkTV presenters. Great Britain would be great again. We would be led by our Prime Minister, Michael Graham. Can you imagine him in number 10 Downing Street? I'm wondering, would I get a job, right? What do you think? I know exactly what job I'd get. Yeah, Home Secretary. I'd have them, seriously. God alive. RNLI disbanded. I wouldn't be the Culture Secretary. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Let's go to Somerset. Maria, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, Jeremy.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
What can I do for you?
I'd like to talk about how we should be able to support elderly people to into food payments while also supporting immigrants, because we have enough wealth in this country. We're the sixth wealthiest country in the world, and what we're doing is we're not supporting immigrants and we're not supporting people in this own country because we are
Sorry, hold on a second. Sorry. You mean, presumably, by what you're saying, when you say we have enough wealth in this country, where is that wealth?
It's with the super rich, the 1%, and we're not taxing them adequately. They're not
so that is the usual Labour answer. Let's tax the really successful people who are already paying 49%. Let's encourage... This is the bit that doesn't make sense of this argument, Maria, and I'm just being totally straight with you. This is why the Labour Party is short-sighted. If you continue to put even more of a tax burden on what you describe as the super rich, they will disappear. You know the non-dom status? I was seeing something the other day. There are 800, I think, or 8,000. I don't know the exact number, but last year, non-doms paid £9 billion in tax, OK? I am not in favour of that. However, by getting rid of them, you've lost £9 billion. If you continue to only have a policy in the Labour government, which is we're going to tax the super rich, they will all go elsewhere and you won't get anything from them and it won't work. Surely when you say there's money to help the migrants, you miss the main point. How are you going to help the people of this country if you're wiping the backside of criminals who shouldn't be in this country in the first place?
Well, studies have shown that wealthy people in the UK want to be here.
Sorry?
But wealthy people in the country want to be here. And if they have businesses here and they're not going to leave.
So I'm just a bit confused. How can a young man... Let's take it really slowly. So a young man who's in a foreign country who apparently is being bombed, leaves his wife and kids, first problem for me, comes to the first country that isn't being bombed, doesn't stay there, that's the second problem for me, arrives in the UK, because we will do anything for anybody, and is then doing better off than people who have worked all their lives, not the super rich. How is that fair?
I don't think many migrants here are doing better than the average people here.
Sorry, say that again?
I don't think migrants are doing better than the average people here.
How do you know that? Why don't you leave Somerset and go to Datchet and ask the people of Datchet who have worked all their lives? It's all over the news today. How the one hotel in Datchet is crammed with 370 young men, not with their wives and kids, by the way, because they don't care about them, because they're not leaving war-torn countries. They're coming here because we are soft. I have no problem with softness if we can afford it, but we're not doing it for our own people. So how can we, apart from, in your mind, taxing the super rich even more who will disappear, how can we afford to be the way we are when these people do? I mean, does it bother you when you're saying we should support these migrants that they're committing the crimes that they are? They throw their passports in the sea. Does it bother you that such a high percentage of criminals in our prisons are illegal migrants?
Well,
thank you for your call, Maria. I really appreciate it. Let's go to Manchester. Michael, you're on Talk Drive. How are you?
Hello, Jeremy. Hi. So,
mate, your line's awful. Have you got your phone on or what? Sorry, buddy. Have you got your radio on or something? Because it keeps cutting back.
Just 1 second.
Oh, that's better. That's okay. You better. Yeah, you better. What you got?
Right, so if that young lady's the future of our country, and most likely is, God help us all.
Well, it reminded me of my father-in-law who told me last night that he was talking to one of his grandchildren, no disrespect to that child, and she was saying, but these poor people are, they're coming over with their wives and kids. No, they're not. They're coming on their own. But no, the facts are, and I'm not being harsh. I'm quite happy to help people but we can't help ourselves. Fact. End of.
So, Jeremy? Hello?
Go on, I'm listening.
Hi, sorry, right. OK, it's your show after all.
Yes.
So, I'm fast approaching 70, still working, and I'm not complaining about working. I have a healthy work attitude or approach to life. My boss is older than me. I'm Jewish, so I'm not only a proud Jewish person, I'm a proud British person.
Mm-hmm.
Jewish people, I descend from immigration, Eastern European immigration. And my boss, who is older than me, his late grandfather said to him, coming from Eastern Europe, pogroms, persecution, whatever, he said, we came to this country because we wanted to be free. We were also free to starve. And I think that one sentence says it all.
Listen, I'm afraid I tend to spout the same thing every night. I have a great guy who picks me up sometimes from the train. He's Bangladeshi. He's been here 40 years. His grandfather brought his father and him over, I think, 40 years ago. And he said to me, he said, Jez, we were told to work hard, earn the respect of the country that we were lucky enough to be in, and respect what that country was about. And I consider him more English and British than me, right? Because he's got it ingrained in him, and he works and he pays his taxes. So when people expect... When we talk about illegal migrants, there are millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people who come to this country who should be here, who have worked hard and do such a great job. But I'm not having Gert Maria, that's her opinion. But as Jill in Cornwall's just said, if that is what the younger generation firmly believe, whether that's through the mass media or social media, that's dangerous, because the reality is, people, we are skint. We cannot afford the interest on the money that we owe, and I'm afraid in times like that, there have to be hard decisions. And the hand-wringing lefties who say we should worry about people, I get that. But the world is not what it was. Michael, I've got to go. We really appreciate you being on. This is Talk Drive, 10 to 6.
I can show you this graph, maybe.
Yeah.
You see that? So the blue is men, the red is the women.
Right.
And on this side here, the left-hand side, there's the children. So it's age on the bottom. Anyhow, so there's
so very small numbers, in other words.
34% women and children were killed in over 4 months in Khan Yunis.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome to the show. 7 minutes per. No, sorry, 7 minutes. Listen. I'm just looking at my phone, and the reason because my son had his first GCSE today, and he had French oral. I'm famous at my school for getting the lowest ever percentage in the history of French oral, but he said it went good. I remembered it was French. It was all right. So that's good. A round of applause for him. It's very good. Right, push the button, names. Come on, crack on.
Sport Summary on Talk.
Hey, very good evening to a man who is to broadcasting what? No, I'm joking. Sam Ellar, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. How are we?
Can I just crack straight on? I don't want to talk about Liverpool. I don't want to start with that. I want to talk about... I am not a major boxing fan, but that had to be Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn on Saturday night with the two dads involved, and TalkSport did such a great job. I thought that was the greatest fight I've ever seen in my life. I genuinely was hooked.
Do you know what? It was one of those where I didn't like the build-up. It was a messy build-up, wasn't it? There was the postponement. There was the weight issue in the build-up to it. And, you know, there was smashing the egg in the face. And I thought to myself, this is more... And it's nothing new, but it's more WWE than boxing. But then, you know what? As you rightly said, Jez, in the ring, the 12 rounds, it was special. It was brutal. It was fierce. It was competitive. And it was edge-of-the-seat stuff. All three judges scored the contest 116 to 112 to Eubank Jr. So he beat Ben by unanimous decision. And, yeah, I think it's fair to say a thrilling 12-round middleweight fight. And, yeah, you know what? Lots of talk, but that fight lived up to it. Sometimes, Jez, these fights can almost... The build-up's more exciting than the actual match. But this was... Yeah, this was top-class boxing.
And I know nothing about it, but I was bumped into by Daniel Dubois today, who said, God, I used to watch you with my mother. This is genuinely true.
Really?
He was in here with Piers to talk about his world title fight in July at Wembley Stadium. More of that on TalkSport coming up. But I said to him, he looked at me like I'd landed from Mars. I don't think Eubank Jr. should be trying to do that weight again. I think that's a one-off. I think the other guys should go to welterweight.
Not safe, Jeremy.
But I think that's a really important point. Liverpool. I think it would be hard to overestimate or overcompliment Arne Slot. What an incredible first season. Wins the Premier League at a canter. And whatever you get left by Jurgen Klopp, the guy's done a phenomenal job, hasn't he? Premier League champions.
He was left a really, really good squad. He was left lots of good players. But then he's come in, he stamped his own input on it. We've seen a new approach. We've seen player improvement. We've seen slightly different formations, different tactics. And yeah, with 4 games to go, the Premier League it's officially with Liverpool with 15 points clear of Arsenal with 4 games to go. You've got Van Dijk, who's been at his best. Salah is arguably the best player in the world. Unsung heroes, Ryan Gravenberch dropping deep has been outstanding. Someone like an Alexis McAllister has been top notch. Pretty much right from the get-go, Liverpool have been faultless. They lost on the 4th game of the season, Nottingham Forest, then went on a ridiculous run. And look, sure, Arsenal and City this season, nowhere near their best. There's no doubt about that. But Liverpool win their 4 remaining games. They'll get to 94 points, which is still a pretty special achievement. And of course, the last time they won the league...
Does it as a fan herald, because with football, you know this, it goes through cycles. The Invincibles of Arsenal, the Manchester United class of 92... Do Liverpool now dominate for the next 4 to 5 years? Or is the Premier League never going to be like that anymore, in your mind, Sammy?
No, I don't think Liverpool will dominate because I think Manchester City have got too much money and too much power to allow that to happen. We know they're going to spend big in the summer, and if they don't get it right in the summer, they'll go and spend big in January, and it'll continue, and they'll strengthen, they'll improve. I think I know Arsenal's league form this season has been quite underwhelming. But I think they've shown in the Champions League, battering Real Madrid, they're a really good team. And they're not miles away either from being a good team. So just those 2 teams are top teams. They'll definitely be stronger next season. So while I think Liverpool could win it again next year, I don't think they'll dominate and win 4 and 5 like we've seen with City over the past few years.
I'm going to give you something, and this is just a gut feeling. Guy that drives for me drives for Chelsea. I'm going to give you a little thing. You can use this or you can abuse me over it.
Okay, I'm ready.
I think Cole Palmer will leave Chelsea this summer. I think the biggest mistake that Pep Guardiola made was selling Cole Palmer, whose family are still up north. I'm going to say that I think Cole Palmer will end up at either Man City, Manchester United, or Man City or Liverpool this summer. There you are. You can laugh at me in my face.
Well, you know what? He signed. Do you know his contract? He signed one of these ridiculous contracts.
9 years. There's a
Signed
get
9-year
out.
deal.
There's
So
a
he's got
get out.
He's got what? A release clause?
75. No, is it 125 million or something?
Well, it's definitely not 75. I mean, that would be that.
I
that
think
would be
the kids.
ridiculous,
I think the kid will head north. You think I'm nuts, don't you?
I think it would take something absolutely ridiculous and astronomical to get him out of a contract where he's got 8 years left in it. Yeah, I think one day he'll definitely go back up north. He's got the link to City. He's actually, I believe, a Man United fan as a kid. And look, I don't think Chelsea at the moment are a long, long way away from where he wants to be, winning league titles, playing in the Champions League. But I'm going to say I'd be gobsmacked, Jez, if he's not there next season at least.
What about Graham Potter? An appalling, again, demonstration by West Ham, losing from 2-1 up with 3 seconds remaining. Is Potter under pressure? I've got 1 minute.
Yeah, do you know what? Yeah, you're 17th in the Premier League. I mean, goodness me, you've got players like Kudus, Paqueta, Bowen in your team. That front three on paper is ridiculous. This is a West Ham team who look badly organised.
They do.
They look all over the place defensively, and you have to almost say you're so lucky that the three that came up are so bad, and you haven't ever had to look over
I think for West Ham and Spurs, Levine and I were talking last night, but I'll tell you one thing, it does absolutely prove that I was right. All those idiotic West Ham fans that called for David Moyes to go should be
crazy, Jeremy.
Absolutely crazy. Sammy, are you back tomorrow? Are you busy?
Yeah, I'll be in the studio tomorrow.
Good man. Sam Ellard, Sport. Thank you very much indeed. We're live across the UK. Talk Drivers on until 7. 0344 499 1000. News at 6 is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just gone 6 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Talk Drive is on 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Let's go to Dave. Voice note, go.
Hello, Jezza. Great show, but I'm afraid it's too late to save this country now. We're done for. We're doomed.
Great. That'll make me happy. Judith, save me.
I'm laughing so much. I mean, it's just, you couldn't make it up, could you, again? I always think, gosh, we've reached the pinnacle of stupidity. And then we have another Migrant of the Day story. But to follow your Monty Python theme, Jeremy, I think we just have to look on the bright side of life. So always look on the bright side of life. Da-dum, 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 da-dum.
Okay. Great. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we say a very good evening to a woman who always looks on the bright side of life. She's my yin to her yang. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Isabel Oakeshott, hello.
I'm not sure we're doomed. I mean, I still think it's rescuable, but I do agree we're on the edge.
Right, you can decide what we're going to talk about because I don't want to be told off. What would you like to talk about?
Let's talk about migrants coming to a town near you.
Well, listen, it's really interesting actually because as you and Richard know, I mean, I used to live on the Long Walk, and Datchet's this sort of sweet little hamlet on the sort of banks of the Thames, and for all those do-gooders who go, yes, but you don't understand. I know we have this conversation loads, Isabel, but people will phone and they'll go, you don't understand what it's like to leave a war-torn country. Let's put it in the eyes of people who have retired to Datchet, worked all their lives, they want to sell their homes or they want to settle there or whatever. They are in their droves saying that 370 migrant men, not with their families, by the way, are in this local hotel. They sit on the green, smoking and drinking and abusing people. The local shops have suffered break-ins and shoplifting. There is abuse. There's all sorts of things going on. The police do nothing because they're scared, as we know, to be accused of raking up multicultural or multinational problems. So many people in Datchet now want to sell their homes, and the sad irony is they can't because of the fact that their town, in their own world, is being overrun by illegal migrants. I just, when you listen to Dave say this country's on its backside, when you listen to that, it's hardly surprising if we allow this to happen.
Well, we are allowing it to happen, and it's not just Datchet. I mean, there are so many towns up and down the country that I'm afraid have been at least temporarily ruined by illegal immigration and indeed sort of semi-legal migration, by which I mean people coming over on false pretenses. They do manage to rustle up the paperwork, but they're just flooding areas and performing only cash in hand jobs, bringing over relatives. It's changing the face of the country, and people in fancy parts of London that read The Guardian don't want to acknowledge this, but they are.
Well, their people aren't living next door to them in bloody Hampstead or wherever they live. That's a fact. The Guardian reading lefty lovers. It's ideology. They don't know what it's like to live somewhere where this happens. But we shouldn't fear, Isabel. In fact, we should tell Dave to believe, because our Prime Minister, and I'm going to deliver it as he did today, I am going to unveil a crackdown on immigration, pause, after this week's local elections, close brackets. He really has become, or was always, I don't know, maybe he managed to dupe the electorate. He really is becoming, in his mind, the master of the soundbite. He's lied to the faces of waspy women, to the faces of our farming community, to the faces of our pensioners, to the faces of our veterans, and now he's got the gall, 3 days before, and we can't be specific because of the elections, there are some local elections. He thinks it will, take some wind out of the sails of other parties, like Reform, if he stands up and says, I'll sort it after the elections. Do you think people are that stupid again?
100% not. I mean, that is beyond embarrassing. I was talking to Ian Collins about this earlier today. The only thing that will make a difference for Labour on this now is if they announce something really extreme, and when I mean extreme, I don't mean unacceptable. I mean, this is what I would say. Anyone who comes over illegally gets put in a supermax jail. My own view is that we should be building a supermax jail, which is specifically for illegal immigrants. And I tell you, I doubt we'd have to keep it open for too long. Once the message gets out that if you come over in one of those boats, you are going into that supermax jail pending deportation, then I think we'd soon find the flow of migrants across the channel dries up.
It's really interesting as well. I mean, I repeated it a couple of times so far on the show, but my father-in-law was having a chat with one of his grandchildren, and she's a lovely girl. She was saying, but these poor people arrive with their wives and children. No, they don't. They leave them in the war-torn countries. All right. And the reason they come here is because this is the first country they get to that isn't being bombed. Rubbish. All of this stuff, all this ideology, the truth of the matter is we've long argued, haven't we, about what is a good deterrent. The Conservative Party thought Rwanda was. Apparently in 2024, as one of the leading countries in the world, we can't come up with a processing system. I'd go further than you. I would create, however many people it took, a system, an organisation, as they did with the Passport Office when that went wrong, whereby they could cure these problems with trained people and they would make decisions. You're right. If there is a deterrent, the deterrent should be that it's not such a bloody attractive option to go to the United Kingdom. You ain't getting a hotel, you ain't getting a credit card, you ain't getting a mobile phone, you ain't getting a doctor, you ain't getting a dentist, you ain't having your backside wiped. Because the truth is, peeps, if you were arguing that it was just about being bombed, you'd have stayed in France, wouldn't you? You'd have stayed in France, but nobody wants to live on a beach in France, do they? Because that's not as nice. And so I've always believed that ultimately the deterrent for the United Kingdom, Isabel, is to make it less attractive for people to take the PISS out of us. I really believe that.
I mean, it doesn't have to be less attractive. It has to be really unattractive. You know, there may be a couple of other EU countries that are as stupid as we are.
Are there? Who?
Well, I strongly suspect that, for example, Germany, and we see what the consequences of that has been, you know, Germany providing so much for migrants. And I don't know the details, but that really has completely blown up in Germany. You know, week after week, awful scenes there. We don't want that on our streets, and thankfully we don't have it. It may well be, for example, that Sweden is very over accommodating, but get beyond the EU and you will not, I think you will not find a country in the world that treats illegal immigrants like we do. Now, I'm not saying that we have to be cruel. You know, we don't need to make a virtue out of being inhumane. I'm not suggesting that. And I also accept that some, and I do, I'm afraid, think it's a minority of those who are coming over the boats genuinely have fled somewhere horrible. I mean, most of them are coming from difficult countries. But here's the thing. There are 30 countries in the world that are currently at war. They're engaged in it. They are embroiled in civil wars. And around about something like 80, which is a big proportion of all countries, are engaged in a war beyond their own borders. If we're just going to adopt the policy that we will not turn back anyone whose country is at war, you might as well just say come one, come all, which is effectively what we're doing. So we have to be really tough, I'm afraid, and that means incarceration. And that would stop the problem that you're talking about in Datchet and so many other places where we just got young men, and they are, vast majority are young men, just hanging around in town centres, up to no good or up to nothing. Neither of those things are a positive, are they?
And no, they're not. And actually, the kickback against what you and I believe comes from the people who, as you said, have never experienced this. And I still struggle to even begin to understand how politicians who want to succeed, who want to get re-elected, cannot actually understand that the British people genuinely have had enough. And if that is not grasped, then the alternative will become everybody's reality. However, not only is he going to sort illegal migration after the local elections, but poor old Starmer's got yet another problem. And I said this to everybody when the election was on, when we were obviously being as careful as we are now because we're in Purdah and we have to be careful. But during the general election, I remember sitting here thinking, nobody's going to listen to me because I'm 60 and I remember 79. And anyway, the Tories are so crap. Let's be perfectly honest that I think the British public will listen to anybody. This man's a liar. Not only is he a liar, a lot of his front bench are incompetent. Last week, Rachel Thieves was told by the IMF there's no room to wiggle, that she's got to either raise taxes or still further stretch our public services because we're skint. And I said it earlier, and I apologise if you've been tuning in all that time, but, you know, in the old days, the socialist government would do two things. They'd either tax the super rich even more, Actually, you know, they would give pay rises to their mates and print money, all of which does one thing, which is bankrupts the United Kingdom. Today we discover that nurses and teachers are going to, or should be given, pay rises of up to 4%. Now, they won't give a toss that it's a Labour government. The unions will rise up, say we want our money, and Keir Starmer's got an issue with Reeves because they go, we can't afford it. I had a caller earlier who said, we're the wealthiest country in the world, we should tax the rich more. The rich are going to leave and this country is going to go skint. This is a one-dimensional government, and shame on the people that didn't see that, because this ain't getting any better, is it, Isabel? Not at all.
It's so naive just to carry on banging on about taxing the rich. The rich are really a highly mobile group of people.
Yep.
And, you know, we might not agree with the way many super rich people see the world. I remember a very super rich person that I like a lot was explaining to me that he sees the world a bit like countries, a bit as if they're hotels. And if he's being charged a 5-star hotel rate for a 3-star hotel, he just moves to a different hotel. And at the time I thought, well, that's really sad to see the world in that way, you know, to have no sort of pull to your home country,
Yep.
to think all a bit like a hotel. But that, I'm afraid, is actually the way a lot of the very, very rich people feel. And they're truly global, truly international. So if you keep hammering them, the few that remain in the UK, and a bunch have just left, by the way, because of a change in what's called the non-dom regulation. So we've just lost a whole bunch of actual billionaires. If people on the left think that's clever, then they are much more stupid.
Well, can I just jump in? Those very billionaires, and I don't tend to agree with the non-dom status, but you have to look at both sides of every argument. Do you know how much those people that have left in the last 2 months has cost the British Treasury? £9 billion. £9 billion, which is what we also gave. Well, we're giving that straight to the Chagos Islands, the Maldivian government. I mean, the whole thing's, it's all about, we talk about it every day, it's all about priorities. And I suspect that what is happening in Birmingham, and I said this to my kids and they look at me like I'm weird, I think that there will be strikes, I think there will be shortages, I think there will be, and I think energy will be at the centre of the next, and I know net zero is for many people the be all and end all, and they talk about migration, but I think the fact that we have the most expensive energy in the Western world, if you look at America and the way they've done it by drilling, that's the way forward. But we're surrounded by environmentalists, we're surrounded by ideological people, and the truth of the matter is that something has to give. And I, listen, I mean, I can sit here and say I don't care about the next 4 years. I do, because I think it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And I fear, genuinely fear, that with everything that's going on, that the right, with everything that's happening with the Tories and Reform and other parties being created, that this man, who I think is a proper socialist, by the way, Starmer, could actually sneak in the back door again. Genuinely.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine if that happened? I think I genuinely think we are right on the edge, you know, of a kind of cataclysmic social breakdown. And I know that sounds so extreme, but we're seeing examples.
I think it does. I think it sounds realistic. I think it sounds realistic.
You know, and it's all very well for, you know, home for me, real home is the Cotswolds. I'm lucky enough to live in one of the nicest parts of the UK, and people in that area just are completely, by and large, a lot of them are completely oblivious to what our really deprived city centres and, you know, the toughest estates in the UK actually look and feel like. And so they think that there isn't much of a problem, and, you know, let's carry on taxing everybody to the hilt. Let's carry on making ordinary people carry the burden of the net zero fantasy ideology, and they push and carry on with this stuff. And I just wonder when it gets to the point that something gives. You know, I don't want our country to explode, but effectively it did last summer in those riots, and I just hope we don't go down that route again.
No, because what you have to do, what we all have to do as responsible people, is say you have to use your vote. You have to use your vote, and if you've got to wait 4 years. But I mean it. I never thought I would say this, but my fear My fear is that, yeah, Reform are storming it. Yes, the Tories are stalling it. Maybe that changes, maybe it doesn't change. But I'll tell you what I do believe. I believe that this guy is as much of a socialist as Jeremy Corbyn. One has to remember how he got elected. He got elected as the leader of the Labour Party by embracing Corbynista policies. He did, and then he spent 2 years destroying them. He will do anything, Keir Starmer, to gain power. I read a really interesting article at the weekend, which is frightening, that says that Morgan McSweeney as Chief of Staff and the sort of Labour High Command, they won't stay loyal to Starmer in the long run because he's not left-wing enough. He got them elected. No, genuinely, and their eyes are on Wes Streeting and all that. Listen, there are stages in your life when you look back at things, and I think maybe 79 didn't resonate as much as it did now as it did then for me, because when you see what happened to this country, and it's really, really simple maths. If I'm financed by lots of unions and then I get the top job, and I say, thank you very much, and then they say, oh, we'd like a 30% pay rise. If I don't say yes, they're going to do their best to unseat me or cause trouble. And that's what's going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen, because they will be holding a gun to the head of this government.
I just want to say one thing, Jez, which is we've got local elections on Thursday, and turnout for local elections is typically really low. And I get that. You know, I am 100% guilty over the years of not bothering voting in local elections because it just seems so boring
and pointless.
Who cares? Who cares who runs the council? Well, listen up. Whatever party you might be inclined to, please just vote on Thursday, because that is the only thing that most of us can do to make our feelings known.
I couldn't agree more. I hate, and you know this, we share the same thing. I don't care if there's a referendum or an election and the party that I don't like win in a democracy. I cannot stand the people that then spend 5 years going, oh, this lot are an utter disgrace. Did you vote? No, I didn't bother. There's no point. Well, you stupid idiot. If you had voted, there might have been a different outcome. That's the point, right?
And you just got to decide what issue is most important to you, whether it's clearing up the bins or potholes or immigration or net zero, whatever it is, and then work out which party represents that. You might have a different answer to my answer, but look into it, even in a simple level. I'm sure like the vast majority of our listeners will be very motivated and they will get out and vote. But I think it would be so amazing this time round, however the outcome of these elections, if there's actually a surge of interest.
I agree. It's interesting because interest, of course, alongside the cynicism and the disillusionment that's being felt across this country. But you show that by voting. Final quick thing, by the way, we're going to take a call. Fat cat bosses rake in cash from Quangos. Another lie. I'm going to destroy Quangos. A Quango is, in my mind, nothing more than an organisation that politicians adhere to because they go, I don't want to make a decision. I'm going to kick that cat into the long grass and that bloody Quango can make a decision in 5 years. Frighteningly, hundreds of these people running these Quangos set up by governments are being paid more than the Prime Minister. I mean, this is like there should be a non-dom status for Quango bosses, shouldn't there?
It's unbelievable. I've been at one remove trying to deal with one of these Quangos. I'd never even heard of their existence. I'm sure they've got massive multi-million pound, squillion pound budget from this government. No one answers the phone. No one responds to emails. And you're kind of like, who are these people? Who are you? What are you actually doing? Or are you just producing totally unintelligible reports about stakeholders and frameworks and populating your website with stuff that no one ever reads to make yourself look busy? I tell you what, if the right parties get into government eventually, the ones that many of us might want to see in power, you're all for the chopping. I mean, we can't go on like this, can we?
We'll take a call, actually. You're right to take a call. He wants to talk Quangos. Stuart's in London. Stu, you're on Talk Drive. Isabel's with me. What you got?
First of all, I'd like to say, if you two don't stand as MPs at the next election, I'll be very upset, because you two will be outstanding MPs.
We've no comment, have we, Isabel? We've no comment, have
we? Well, we might plot to do something like that. Now, who knows who we would stand for? You know, we might. I tell you what, we might stand for the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. You know, something like that.
I won't. Listen, he will be our Prime Minister. But yeah, I mean, listen, Isabel. Yeah, very interesting. Stuart, crack on.
well, these Quangos, you do your research. It's 125 billion a year they cost this country.
How much?
I'd like to know exactly what they achieve, what they do. And in the mail today, some of these people on 5, 6, 7 different Quangos. The money they're costing this country is outrageous.
Yeah. I know, I see it all. You know what? I have to say, it's been the same under every government that I've reported on, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and each and every one of them promises to do a bonfire of the Quangos.
Right, so explain this to me, lovely lady. Explain to me then, if again, and this is where I don't understand politics. For 20 years, you've studied this. Stuart makes a really salient point. Why hasn't anybody in the last 20 years had the intelligence to go, that's a vote winner, that's a waste of money, I can spend that better elsewhere, I'm getting rid of it? Why is there a lack of conviction of common sense in British politics?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they do say they'll scrap it, and then they change it into something else. So a classic would be, aren't they supposed to be scrapping NHS England? I mean, you know, if you're telling me that means that thousands and thousands of people are going to be looking for other jobs, and I'll tell you that's nonsense. You know, they will just move into different publicly funded structures. This is the problem. And in any case, from this government, ideologically, they just believe in big publicly funded states. You know, they want more of this stuff, really. So I have no faith.
Stuart, we appreciate your words. You enjoying talk then, yes? Tell your friends.
Can I just say something?
Oh, yeah.
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Oh, yeah. Right. What they do, Starmer, every week, he's starting 2 or 3 more of these Quangos.
Yes.
And for that sort of money, for that, Elizabeth, I can't believe you've been doing that for 20 years. You look too young. But
sorry, can we rewind? Did you call her Elizabeth? She's called Isabel.
Isabel, sorry, I cannot believe you've been doing it for 20 years. It looks,
well,
you must
thanks
have
for
been
that.
doing it
I certainly
when you
feel
were
like
10
I have.
years old.
What did you say? She looks how old?
She looks about 30.
Get off, man. What you talking about? Isabel, how rude of him to say you look 30. I think you look 25. Elizabeth Oakshott, thank you very much for being on the show. Really appreciate it, Madonna. Thank you so much indeed. 6:25. We're live across the UK. Interesting chat there from Stuart Quangos. Hundreds of millions of pounds every year for a bunch of unelected people to sit down and go, this is what the government should do, because we ain't got politicians with the balls big enough to make a decision for themselves. Or, in fact, if they're a woman, no balls, just courage, conviction. Oh, you know what I mean. Back in 3.
I can show you this graph, maybe.
Yeah.
You see that? So the blue is men, the red is the women.
Right.
And on the On this side here, the left-hand side, there's the children. So it's age on the bottom. Anyhow, so there's...
so very small numbers, in other words.
34% women and children were killed in over 4 months in Khan Yunis.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Our own show. Welcome back, 6:28. We're live across the UK. This is JK on Drive. I don't know what's the matter with me. I'm very excitable today. I'm like a kid in a sweet shop. That didn't sound right. Dave's in South Gloucestershire. Isabel is right. However, announcing such a measure is one thing, but they have actually got to do it. What? What? Announce what, Dave? I mean, that doesn't matter. I don't know what you mean, man, but I appreciate the message. Mark's in Norwich. When Starmer said he will be announcing a crackdown after the elections, he's admittedly really saying that he's failed to defend our borders so far. Seeing as this is the most important part of his job, surely he should now resign. How can he justify not resigning after having failed so miserably for so many months? Oh, Mark, oh, Mark, oh, Mark. I couldn't agree with you more, but this is what you and so many people who are worrying have to get into your heads, and it's not a nice thing to have to say. If he wants to, we've got another 48 months of this man. I mean more. 50 months. Yeah. 50 months. That's 1,500 days. It's honestly, it's not going to change unless something, I don't know. Listen, Boris Johnson had a massive majority and was out within 3 years. Maybe stuff will happen. I don't know. But as it stands, this is what the country voted for. My opinion is I don't think the country knew what it was letting itself in for. Another person or organisation that has come under fire today, quelle surprise. Was that French? I'm not sure. Bonjour. Quelle surprise. As the BBC. The BBC's got a new chairman called Samir Shah. Seems like a nice man, but he's decided to do something that doesn't usually work, which is to have an internal inquiry, because he seemed to think the behaviour wasn't great and the view of the BBC wasn't great, certainly after the Hugh Edwards scandal. Yes, you remember the paedophile who got a suspended sentence and is still raking in £200,000 a year as a pension, whilst us taxpayers are paying for their licence fee, because nobody, again, has got the balls to say to him, you're not having another penny, we want our money back. So Samir Shah thought, I'm going to get a sort of an internal thing and have a look. A small number, this is what they've decided, a small number of BBC stars and managers behave unacceptably at work, and bosses often fail to tackle them. But today Samir Shah said, I'm drawing a line in the sand. He said, after today, let me state very clearly, if you think you're too big a star or too important to live by the values of this organisation, not only are you wrong, but you will find out why. Rebecca Ryan, campaign director to defund the BBC. Strong words from Samir Shah, or just the usual BS by an organisation that never, ever has to justify its existence any longer?
Oh, bless him. He's trying to talk the talk, isn't he? And, you know, it's good to see, but at the same time, I don't think any of us have got any faith that it's going to make any real changes. You know, what's going on here is that the BBC, yet again, is allowed to mark its own homework.
Yes.
And the British licence fee payers that are forced to pay millions for these internal reviews time and time again. And whilst he says, this small minority of people are abusing the system essentially, since this review was launched, we've already had Russell Brand, Westward, we had Greg Wallace, all of these things since the review. They can't even keep up with their own scandals with these internal reviews. So, nobody has any faith that the BBC is going to change this. It's happening month after month. So let's see what happens, but we don't hold out much faith.
It's really interesting for me. I'd never worked for the BBC. I never would work for the BBC. I look at it as an organisation that, in a world that is very different, whereby quite rightly, and I mean this, commercial broadcasters of any ilk and whatever their station is, have to prove their worth by getting an audience which facilitates people choosing to watch them or paying for adverts to sustain them. This sort of mammoth sort of, I don't know how you describe the BBC, that gets this £170 from people, irrespective of whether they watch, irrespective of whether I think there's quality in what is offered. You get prosecuted if you don't. And this organisation, OK, I can accept that if I could look and go, do you know what? There is a beacon of what Great Britain is about, right? It's broadcasting, it's Titans, it's straight down the middle, it's unbiased, it's our state broadcaster. The BBC is pretty symptomatic, in my mind, of what's going on with this country right now, and that is ideology, DEI, tipping the hat to everything for the sake of doing it, listening to focus groups, no conviction, no plan, reactive policy making. And I think it makes a joke of the fact that we have this foisted upon us. And just as a commercial broadcaster, just being honest, I think it's grossly unfair. I think they should get out in the marketplace and prove to the consumer that they've got a product we want to buy, for God's sake. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. I think people are just appalled, and we see in poll after poll that at least 2/3 of the country want to get rid of the licence fee. They're just really unhappy about it because the BBC spends its time lecturing people and patronising people and talking down and pushing this sort of woke metropolitan agenda that the vast majority of the country aren't interested in, and we're forced to pay for it if we watch any kind of live broadcast at all. You know, if you want to watch sport on Sky TV, for example, then you have to pay for the BBC's woke propaganda, and people are just outraged about it. And then not only is that going on, but then you've got these sort of so-called top talent that we have to pay huge amounts of money for, behaving like absolute monsters. You've got Hugh Edwards, who's, you know, a convicted paedophile, who was their top news reporter. So yeah, it's an outrage. And so for them to be like, oh yeah, look, we've done our little internal review and we're going to take this seriously now, it's just far too little too late.
It's interesting, isn't it? Their little review at which they say we're going to make sure. Let's repeat what he said. After today, let me state very clearly, said Samir Shah, the new chairman of the BBC, if you think you're too big a star or too important to live by the values of this organisation, not only are you wrong, but we will find you out. At the same time, this is a Monday this was released. On Saturday, out came an interview. I can never say the guy's name. Who interviewed Gary Lineker at the weekend? What's that guy's name? I don't know what his name is. Amarosian, that's it, right. Where the BBC patently paid Lineker to sit in a studio and criticise the BBC 24 hours before this report comes out saying, if you're a gob whatever and you disrespect us, we will clamp down on you. And they put this interview out, and I remember thinking, so, I mean, he said, he was on there going, you know, they don't understand about Gaza and they wanted me out and all this. And I'm thinking, they're paying him extra to do that. It's farcical. The BBC is about ideology and ego, and it has been for as long as all of us know. And for people, Rebecca, I mean, I'm really interested about your organisation because the call to defund the BBC is growing by the minute, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And what we say to people is that if you don't watch any live broadcast TV, luckily now talkTV is a live broadcast TV channel, and so you can watch talkTV without a TV license. So it's just getting that information out there to say, you know, you can watch all of Netflix, you can watch the majority of Amazon Prime as long as it's not that sort of any live channels, and you can watch things on YouTube as long as they're not simultaneously broadcast on a TV channel. So it's a little bit complicated, and that's where people get stuck, and that's where the people get prosecuted and what have you. So it's just about really knowing what on-demand content is, and if you're deciding when you're playing it, then it's, you know, it's not live broadcast. It's okay to have without a TV license as long as it's not BBC iPlayer. So more and more people are catching on to this, and thanks to the sort of COVID lockdowns or whatever, the one good thing to come out of that is that people realise they don't have to sit and watch live broadcast TV anymore. They can watch Netflix or they can watch any other kind of content.
That's interesting because my background is television, and I was with one of the big people in television in this country, without giving away who it was, the other day. And I think everybody agrees that terrestrial television is probably on its backside, is never going to attract the sorts of figures that it did. It still has a place. But clickbait and online, YouTube, whatever you want to say, has become more and more important. And thus, for me, broadcasters have to adapt. But I don't see that the BBC is under any pressure to adapt whilst this money is thrown in their direction, irrespective, as I said, of the quality of their output. Do you, I mean, obviously what you hope for is one thing, but do you believe in 10 years there'll be a BBC licence fee?
I think the issue is that government after government kicks this into the long grass.
Sets up a Quango, yeah.
Lisa Nandy's said some quite interesting stuff about how the licence fee won't continue as it is, but also it won't go into general taxation, because the big concern is that it will be pushed into general taxation.
Why doesn't the BBC pay for itself, like talkTV what has to, like other commercial broadcasters, like ITV has to, Channel 5, Channel 4? Why does the BBC get a free rein? Because if the argument is we need a state broadcaster, why are they so biased against things that the majority of people in this country agree with, they disagree with? They're out on an agenda the whole time.
Absolutely, but politicians are scared of the BBC. They just don't want to touch it, do they? They don't want to put any pressure on, because they don't want to, get excluded from the programmes or whatever, or get a bad write-up. They know how powerful the BBC is. It essentially has a monopoly on the news cycle, doesn't it? Because of BBC Online, what they put as their top news story has a huge impact across the rest of the UK. But at some point, either a government is going to, we're seeing huge changes in the political world, aren't we, with Reform doing so well in the polls, and we're seeing this huge turnaround. So maybe there will be a government up next who will actually do something about this.
Really interesting and great to have you on, Rebecca Ryan, Campaign Director, Defund the BBC. Thank you very much indeed. So, number one policy, first day in power, cancel the BBC licence fee. Fact, simples, 20 to 7.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
20 to 7, we're live across the UK. Kev O'Sullivan, known as Uncle Kev, no, I'm joking, is back from a week-long stretch in a rehabilitation clinic. No, he went on holiday with his wife. He's on from 7 o'clock, Petrie from 10. This is JK till 7. We welcome a man who I would describe Rupert Bell as a man of many talents, several hats, and an impressive CV of broadcasting talent.
Well, that's extremely nice. You got out of the bed the right way this morning then, Jeremy.
I did indeed.
That's very kind of you.
The horse you gave me didn't win the
No problem. No. It ran all right, finished fourth.
Now, are you here at... What are we going to talk? Horse racing? Are we going to talk Royals? What do you want to talk about?
I think we better talk Royals.
Now, and being really careful, because it's a difficult one. Prince Andrew... we all know is at best delusional. There was news over the suicide, they are saying death of his sex abuse accuser Virginia Giuffre. Over the weekend, he remained silent on her suicide yesterday. As a source said, the door to her return is firmly closed. He was last night holed up in his Royal Lodge mansion, and his remaining friends have also been reluctant to say anything. He appeared jovial and confident at last weekend's Easter Sunday service, joining the King and Queen, but the reclusive Prince missed his regular Sunday morning horse ride on the Windsor estate as Virginia Giuffre's death was announced. Now, I've always thought that it's such a difficult subject, the whole Epstein thing, that in paying what he paid, that sent a very strong message. And if he genuinely, and there are many people who believe it was not as it was portrayed, I'm treading as carefully as I can in the photograph, why in the name of the Lord did he give in and pay that money if there wasn't something in it against him? That's how I see it. I can't get away from that.
And that is the problem in the eyes of most people. If you're going to pay what was alleged...
Between 5 and 10 million quid, I think.
To her, it's desperately sad. Clearly a troubled soul.
Yep.
But you consider all the background and what's happened. Goes to Australia. There's custody battles going on around her 3 kids. You know, so there's a lot going on, and she's clearly a troubled soul. But that still does not account for the fact she then became involved in the Epstein, and she was very much part of what was going on. And then Prince Andrew, his ability to choose his friends, or sensible friends, is his undoing. And the fact is, he got involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and indeed Ghislaine Maxwell, and he's been hoisted by his own petard. And ever since that Panorama interview, where, you know, obviously was unravelled dramatically for him, there isn't any way back from him at the moment.
Do you think he genuinely, I mean, he's disillusioned, we know that. Does he genuinely, I mean, is this just media speak? Is he that, no, you know what I'm going to say, is he that stupid? Yes.
Potentially arrogant.
So he thought
arrogant.
And you know who's... this won't go down well with people, but the old man... she absolutely, the Queen, had him on a pedestal. He could do nought wrong in her mind.
There was an element of that, but she was the one who said, right, you've got to cough up here. We've got this. We need this to go away.
And she paid, didn't she?
Well, I'm not sure of the exact details, but whatever.
Point the camera at Rupert Bell's face. Watch this as a question. Don't panic, Ryan. Why do you think the Queen was so soft on Duke of York?
Well, sometimes you get favourites, don't you?
It's a great answer, Belly. It's a great answer. But I don't know whether this is just friends peddling. There's no way back. Of course, there's no way back. That boat has sailed.
Yeah, and he's not helping himself with other.
But then why are
friends.
they allowing him to the Easter service?
Hang on, I'm going to say that's a family affair. He's still. You're going to church with your family.
Do they want him there?
I don't know, but sometimes people have family gets together, and you've got the uncle in the corner who's a sort of embarrassing uncle. Now, of course, he's a sort of...
Peter Kay says that. The embarrassing uncle.
But I mean, in a way, that is a private affair. Of course, it has symbolism in the sense that the king is head of the Anglican Church, and to go to the service, that is important. But that's why we didn't even see him this year, I don't think, at Sandringham. Because, again, he does take the story away. But it was in and out, and it was a sort of... He scuttled in, scuttled out. So it wasn't overly done, but it is still... He's in the family. So that is a private affair. So I think you have to say yes, because he's still... You can't... You don't choose your family.
Do you think that the king... This is turning into a bit of a grilling. Do you think that the king could be stronger? Because I've also always had the belief that... And I don't mean to be thinking...
Yeah.
I always think to myself, he must have loads on the king. Because why hasn't he just thrown him out of Royal Lodge and banished him to Scotland or something? He's the king, for God's sake.
Bloody stick it in water.
Is it?
I think even, you know, and the royal family do have to try and put on a loyal front. They've got a lot of...
I'll tell you where blood won't be thicker than water. When the king's no longer here and William's in charge, he won't give him the time of day. Not in a million years.
There will be less sympathy. But then bearing in mind, what, the king, Prince Andrew's mid-60s.
Nothing wrong with being 60?
No, well, I couldn't agree more.
How old are you, by the way?
About the same age as Prince Andrew.
70... How old is he?
Well, he was born in 1960.
Right, so he's 65.
Yes. And
I was born in 1965.
No, I think I should admit it, but I was at prep school with him, so we were complete contemporaries.
Sorry, you went to prep school with the Duke of York?
Yeah, we were complete contemporaries.
Or were you in the same house?
Well, we only had 90. We didn't have houses per se.
19 people in the school?
90 people in the school.
OK, right, posh that was, wasn't it? So what was he like at sport?
Well, we played second row together.
Sorry, so let me get this absolutely right. Does nobody's ever done this? You put your arm round the Duke of York and put your head
rugby
through somebody else's legs, and there he was, 6 inches from your face.
Yes, and I used to take one for the team because the opposition would say, "Let's get them," you know, because of what you do in rugby. Of course, you're going to.
So is he a friend of yours?
Well, I was at school with him.
Is he a friend of yours?
We haven't had any communication since school.
Oh, that's interesting. OK. And are you quite critical of the way he's behaved? Genuinely, personally?
Yes.
And for you, Yeah, I see what you mean about the family thing. I just find the whole...
No, it's family. It's family.
Because it's the royal family, even if he just goes to that, then it gets built up into something more than it is, right?
Yeah, yes. But the Virginia Giuffre thing, it just proves his choice of friends. He's not the sharpest tool in the box.
Do you think he's been... Right, I'm going to say something really contentious.
Yeah.
Do you think that he has been... We all know Epstein was an animal. And you can absolutely say that his choice of friends wasn't great. It would also be fair to say that there have been several members of the royal family whose choice of friends over the years has also been entirely questionable.
Yes, and the King's got himself into a pickle along the way. And there's been allegations of sort of money in sort of bags and sort of people
he
looking...
went twice, didn't he? What was his name again?
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head. But I know that...
Toothpaste on the... What's it?
Yeah, but the point being, you know, the royal family do have to try and make sure they're as squeaky clean. Yeah. And the King is mindful of that. William is definitely mindful of that. And for Andrew, he is the problem that won't go away. Yeah. And he is holed up, probably harumphing most of the day.
What?
Harumphing.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, basically because he's grumpy and he's not doing it. Yeah, harumphing. I'm sort of...
They are, Jody, I'm harumphing. Get me some more tea. I'm harumphing.
It's a very onomatopoeic word.
I love that.
We're
not breaking at the moment. I want to harumphing. It sounds like a sort of naughty word for the aristocracy. I'm harumphing this afternoon. Don't disturb me.
Because he's not doing what he wants to do. And they're saying that he is able to get some money from some of the links to consultancy firms in his contact book, which probably is from his time when he was representing Britain on the foreign stage. But even that led himself into sort of getting involved in a sort of what may appear to complicated deals which didn't look all quite as they should have been.
He's just not very intelligent, is he?
That's probably about right.
It's marvellous to have you. You're heading off now.
I'm off to Shanghai.
He's off to Shanghai. What a rock and roll lifestyle. Did you get your passport?
I've got my passport, got my visa, and I'm off to commentate on some show jumping for the weekend.
How do you commentate on show jumping? Eddie approached the fence.
Something like that, Eddie.
The Puissance come round to clear rounds. Clear round. 147. Well done. Yeah,
back in the day, I shall be doing that.
You are a multimedia, whatever. Rupert Bell, enjoy Shanghai. Thank you very much indeed. 10 to 7 on Talk Drive.
This is no special pleading of MPs. After all, we've had 2 MPs in recent years actually killed, and many of my female colleagues, particularly female, I regret to say, have had vile trolling online, and many of them death threats as well. So if we want MPs to do the job, I think it's up to the state to provide proper protection. And indeed, we do get a lot of advice on security matters.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back 8 minutes to 7, we're live across the UK. Drive starts again tomorrow morning. No, tomorrow afternoon at 4, but tomorrow your lineup is very simple. The only man to wake up to. In fact, the only man ever to wake up to, the legend that is Mike Graham. Back with Morning Glory from 6, Julia Hartley-Brewer from 10. I've just dropped my microphone. That was a nice sound. Thank you, Ryan. I don't know why I'm blaming him. And of course, Ian Collins, the housewife's choice, will leave my house before I go home tonight, head back to his wife, pretend everything's fine, and be back here tomorrow afternoon from 1 p.m. 0344 499 1000. 1000. Jay is in Essex. You're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Oh, hi, Jeremy.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I've got smoke coming out of my ears.
You've got smoke coming out of your ears?
Yes. This bloody government are so useless. We cannot have them for another 4 years. We don't have to.
Do you want to talk about the Iranian sex toy smuggler?
No, because they're all the same, aren't they? The judges need to be sacked. This country has really got to take a hold of itself.
Yes, that's true.
It's not just even Keir Starmer, it's the whole lot of them are useless, incompetent, they're clowns.
Are we talking about politicians in general or the Labour Party?
The Labour Party.
Yeah.
But everyone keeps saying, oh, we're stuck with them for another 4 or 5 years.
We are.
Well, they can't run without money. So if we use people power, all the people that actually work in the self-employed sort of set, businesses, they're ramming everybody.
Well, they'll do it to themselves, because what they'll do is they've only got one damn policy, and that policy is to tax the successful. And it doesn't mean, by the way, the super rich. Anybody with a small or medium-sized business, with NI going through the roof and workers' rights being brought in, you ain't got jack chance of making any money, which, of course, if you do make a small business successful, that employs people, and money, you know, then goes to the country. So, in the end, what will happen is anybody who's successful will leave, which will mean that people lose jobs. Anybody who's successful will go to another country, which means the income from their the revenue from their tax, that will be lost. And in the end, they will bankrupt themselves. It is as simple as that. The fact is, all these people that ring me and go, you know, we need the king to it's not going to happen. We are stuck with these buggers for the next 50 months. Fact.
But, Jeremy, we all have the power not to pay them our income tax, our council tax, the business rates, the business...
I can't advocate anybody to break the law, but I do think there's a day of reckoning coming.
If did that, for all the self-employed, it's due again in July. Going in disgrace.
Maybe. I'm not into the conspiracy stuff, but thank you very much indeed. It says Quango quacks. That doesn't make sense. Steve is in Oxfordshire. Steve, you're on Talk Drive. How you doing, son?
Yes, mate. Good. How are you?
Not too bad for a balding, nearly 60-year-old has-been. Son, how was your weekend?
Brilliant. Listen, I've got a question for you guys in the media, which I don't...
I'm not in the media. What are you talking about in the media?
Well, listen, I was trying to figure out what the definition of an act of treason is, right?
Oh, God, here we go.
This is a good one, right? So it's an act of betrayal against the sovereign state, okay?
Yes, yes.
Now, we are a sovereign state since we did Brexit, okay?
Yes.
If you're a sovereign state, you have to have a border. And if you have a border, it has to be defended and protected by the government, right? That's their first job,
yes.
Right? So I'd like to put it to you that this government is guilty of treason because they're not protecting their border.
We haven't got a border. We've got an open border. I'm being completely... Listen, somebody joked earlier, you and Isabel should stand for Parliament. It's really, really, really simple to me. People just need to understand that we need politicians that take their spectacles off and are not bothered about upsetting people with a few with a few conviction policies that people perhaps don't understand. It is really simple to stop mass immigration. That's to make it less exciting and better to come to this country. Stop giving people everything and they won't come. Kevin, come in, it doesn't matter. It's as simple as that. Stop giving people stuff simply for coming here. The NHS, get it off a pedestal. Stop giving it money, strip it bare and make it work for who it works for. Earlier we talked about there's so much stuff. I just think people overcomplicate it, but maybe I'm an old bugger. Steve in Oxfordshire, thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, he's been away. He told us he was on holiday. I am here to officially tell you he's been in rehab for an addiction to ego. Kev O'Sullivan is... How are you, son?
Have you got
a suntan?
Yes, I did. It was in Cornwall. It was really sunny. It was amazing, yeah.
It wasn't. He was in Bodmin. It's a rehab centre.
Yeah.
Did you go been to Bodmin?
I didn't go to Bodmin, no.
And
I was in a place called Whitsand Bay. It was lovely.
Oh, on your own?
No, I managed to persuade my wife to come with me.
Did you?
She soon regretted that decision.
Did you go into one of those hotels
No,
for the
we had
elderly?
an amazing cabin in the cliffs.
Did you?
Overlooking the sea.
Invite any of us, did you? Welcome. How's it been? You're up. What you got? Come on, because I'm just interested in the sex toy.
You mean the...
That's why the audience
is it
has
a Syrian, is it? Yes,
it's an Iranian who smuggles vibrators into England, and he said, I can't go back to Iran because under Islamic law, sex toys aren't allowed, and we're letting him stay.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, how many more? There's just more and more of these cases. I mean, you're right. I mean, the tone of your show is exactly right. I mean, this we seem to be staggering from one catastrophe to the next disaster. It's getting ridiculous. You know, in this pathetic announcement by Starmer today, we'll crack down on student visas. I mean, come on.
We'll crack down on immigration, after the local elections. It's just a soundbite of BS.
Of course it is. Of course it is. It's performative, and it's got to stop. And the migrant crisis is going to get worse and worse and worse. We're talking about maybe 70,000, maybe 80,000 this year, because the weather is going to be good, and the invasion will happen. Will continue to happen. Also, I think it's a weird thing in this country under Starmer. It is you deny the truth. So Starmer says, we say, we've got a problem with two-tier justice. No, that doesn't exist. Acts like it doesn't exist. Now you get a guy called Rick Pryor, who was the union chief of the Metropolitan Police. He says officers are reticent, reluctant to confront ethnic suspects in case there are vexatious complaints of racism. He's been sacked for saying this. Ask any copper. It's true. Why has he been sacked for telling the truth?